He's immensely seductive. Quite sure he's right. Obsessionally neurotic. Pretty dangerous, in fact.
Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories.
Do you mean you doubt your powers to convince him?
Say it! Say it!
All right, I'll say it.
Worse than that. What I'm afraid of is his power to convince me.
We're talking about putting a manifestly irresponsible man on national television.
Sweetheart, be reasonable.
What? This is the end game.
I mean, as long as you're reasonable. You have to be reasonable. We have to be reasonable. Thank you very much.
You don't know that I'm going to even do it. You don't know. I may do it. I may not do it. I mean, nobody knows what I'm going to do.
Chris, please explain to the normie we need to finish what we've started.
All right, everybody. It is Friday, July 18th. That's what I meant to say. 2025. Off to a hot start. I'm your moderator, Chris Paul. Let's be reasonable. I didn't even say that it was let's just start again. It's the 180th day of the golden age. Man, Friday or something, you know? I'll blame it on that. Okay, so Donald Trump is currently at the White House with an enormous number of congressmen and senators, and he is signing the Genius Act. So I've been paying attention to that. I don't know where they'll be at right now. I think he's still speaking, but he was going through a long list of thank yous. I just want to, before we get started on other stuff, I want to play the introduction here where Trump walks in. There's already classical music playing. The room is full. Everyone's seated. And finally, Trump arrives. And I'm going to speed it up just slightly once we get into the talking part, because the first few minutes are totally worth listening to, and he's hilarious. So here we are.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Keep going. We work hard. We work hard. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Now, that's awfully impressive. Is that all for the Genius Act? And if it is all for the Genius Act, what is the Genius Act? Because it's bigger than we've thought about it so far. For that to be happening, just saying, let's speed things up here and listen to Trump a little bit.
Yeah, we worked hard. It's a very important act, the Genius Act. They named it after me, and I want to thank you. This is a hell of an act. I did something very unusual. I said, this has been something, a lot of people thought it was impossible, some of the things that have been done. And of course, the great big, I added the word great, the great big beautiful bill, that was something that nobody thought possible. They thought it would be in anywhere from 7 to maybe 3. I'll go the opposite direction, but 3 to 7 different bills. And we said, let's just put it in one, because this way there's something for everyone. And there really is. There's a lot of things for everyone. And when we get the word out how great that is for every single person in this country virtually, and all they have is a soundbite, death. You know what their soundbite is? Death. Aren't they nice? They are the most incompetent people. They've lost their confidence. They've lost everything, if you think about it. But Jasmine Crockett is on her way. She's on her way. She's the new star of the Democrat Party, Jasmine Crockett. They're in big trouble. But I have to tell you, that was great, and this was great. And I'm so tired of making phone calls at 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, getting calls from our great speaker. Sir, we have 12 hard no's. I say, Mike, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. We have 12 hard no's. The good news is I call up. Hello, Jim. How are you? Sir, you have my vote. Sir, you have my vote. They just want a little love. Unfortunately, it's always the same. It's always the same 12 people. It's 5 senators and it's 12. Now, I actually said to John Thune and I said to Mike, I said, listen, I want to have a party, but not to those people that I have to speak to endlessly every time. And they're wonderful because they always seem to come through other than a couple. Rand Paul Jr. from Congress and Rand Paul from, other than a few people. But I said, I want to have them over. We're going to have a party for everybody in Congress, everyone in Congress except 12. We're going to have, and Mike is definitely, Tom, I'll tell you what, Tom is definitely coming. The whole group, where are those 12 people? They're the only people I don't see. We could do it today. We don't have to vote. And I would say of the 53 senators, 48, we're going to have 48 in here. You won't even have to come to that one. But these are the greatest people because they always vote yes, and we don't have to go crazy. You trust us, we trust you. And it's been a very special group of people. We really do. I mean, 96% phenomenal and 4% extremely difficult. Do you agree with that? But they get there, most of them, not all of them. Those are the ones we really don't like. But I want to thank you all for being here. This is really a big day. This afternoon, we take a giant step to cement American dominance of global finance and crypto technology as we sign the landmark Genius Act into law. So congratulations to everybody. This is a big deal. They've come a long way since the Biden administration when they had no idea what you were all talking about. And half of you were under arrest for no reason whatsoever. For no reason. And we want to have it, not China. China wasn't actually, they were watching this. They like it. And we've got this, we've got AI, we've got a lot of great ones happening. And this is a very big thing. And I want to thank the bill's author, Senator Bill Haggerty, a very good friend of mine.
All right, and we can leave it there. I'm going to have to spend some more time on the stablecoin thing and this Genius Act because it seems like just the vibe of the people in that room and the way Trump is presenting this event, it seems to be more important than we might think at surface level, at face value. And considering the timing, the day after a major news story attempted to take him down, he announces this morning he's going to have a big signing, announces a Hannity appearance tonight. They tried to steal a news cycle, it would seem to me, and it looks like Trump has not allowed that to be successful. And that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today. That was pretty interesting. Also interesting was the way he described the vibe within the Republican Party and people coming around eventually to help him out. He said there are 12 congressmen and 5 senators, and we've certainly witnessed that back and forth over time. Maybe it's just for effect, maybe it's just for storytelling purposes, or maybe they really did want the president to want them. The horse trading in Washington, maybe they think it helps. I don't know. But some really interesting stuff in there. And we'll, like I said, think more about this stablecoin thing. It's kind of been on the back burner for me, but I guess it should be moved up to the front. Okay, so let's get into the rest of what I was planning to talk about today. And I want to start with a post I made on Substack the other day. And I want to go through this just to put it on the podcast record for the people who listen and don't like reading articles or don't receive the articles or whatever else the situation might be. But I was thinking the other day, because this was a week of extreme high volume bot swarm attacks. Now, bot swarms can't hurt you unless psychologically, if you allow them to, but they are quite annoying. And they're very obvious, and you can tell what their political motivation is going to be. We've talked about this a number of times. We had the NAFO op, the North Atlantic Fellas Organization. It was a bot swarm and like troll factory operation to support the Ukraine war scenario. Then we had another one with the Ron DeSantis campaign. And now we have one on the Jeffrey Epstein files stuff. And it is extraordinary to me. I spend a significant amount of time on Truth Social relative to a lot of other people who are primarily only on X. That's where they spend their time throughout the day, regardless of where they have a presence. But all week, just beset by Epstein bots. All of them, nearly all of them, created within the last week or 2 weeks. All the messaging, very in line, very, very much the same. Also, there are pro-Trump people pushing that up too. I'm a Trump supporter, and pro-Trump bots, I should say, not people. But they will approach their social media personality saying, I'm a Trump supporter. I've supported him for this long and this long and this long, but this has gone too far. Okay? When you see a date within the last few days of someone signing up to a social media platform, the idea that they are going to get on there and launch harassment campaigns about one of the hot button political issues in the news cycle en masse at the same time, that's not human behavior. And I think that we can see that virtually all the time. This is an anomaly, and I think it should be understood as such. And the point of the anomaly is to suggest that they are waging psychological warfare on Trump supporters attempting to cleave Donald Trump from the MAGA base. This is something they've been trying to do for 10 years. Attempt after attempt after attempt after attempt. And it has never worked. And it's not going to work this time, of course. But it's important to recognize what these efforts are and what the tactics they use are, so that we can prevent ourselves from getting hoodwinked, getting psychologically manipulated by people online. And so I wrote this up the other day because, it's called Test Your Sanity Every Day. That is something that I actually do focus on doing. And in the post-2020 election period, I would simply ask myself, when I'm talking about fake elections and analyzing everything through the lens of fake elections, which is not an easy or pleasant thing to do. It's a very lonely thing to do because everybody else is engaged with the mainstream news cycle and the reality as the consensus agrees it exists. And here's this other guy saying, actually, it's not like that. It's a different way entirely. And the fact that our elections are fake proves that it has to be a different way. And so that's a very critical piece of information that a lot of my argument rests on. And I think that I have substantiated that argument beyond the standard of proof for 4+ years now. Okay? There's absolutely no reason to believe in the legitimacy of our election systems. Therefore, they cannot elect legitimate politicians. And everything must be understood from that. Okay? It is only at bottom a power game. There are only two sides in that power game, the worldly side and the godly side. And so we try to go to the godly side. We are the people who do not worship the state. The people who worship the state cannot be on the godly side. Okay? They are on the side of that evil twin faction. They worship the state. They are statists. Many of them are globalists. Many of them are Zionists. Many of them are Marxists. Many of them are neoconservatives. But they are all quite worldly, which is why they want to coalesce power among people of their class and demographic and eventually hope to control everything. And, there might be supremacist movements within that think they're going to ultimately be the winners. Their race or ethnicity or religion is going to ultimately win. There might be that. But if you are focused on acquiring power, if you are focused on material wealth and reputational status, you're operating in the worldly realm. Okay, there is something beyond that. And to prioritize only the things of the world is to deny all the things beyond that. It's to say, no, the things I worship are right here. These are the primary forces in my life, and everything else comes in second to the worldly concerns. There are a lot of people who think that way. They think that the entire point of human existence is simply to acquire things and to have experiences. Okay. And so, it is from that perspective that people on our side are deemed crazy for religious beliefs or political beliefs, or the epistemology I have, for instance, where I'm telling people that the thing the television is showing them isn't actually true or real, and they can't wrap their head around it. They think I must be crazy. And the truth is, I might be crazy, just like they might be crazy. Part of knowing you're crazy, or part of being crazy, is not knowing you're crazy. So how do we respond to these people, and how do we know that we're not the crazy ones? Okay, so let me just get into this. Maybe reading it would be better than me re-explaining it. We've been intentionally deceived throughout our lives about every single aspect of our existence. Our governments were hired to manage us. The news is just some story or rumor or advertisement. Our elections are fake. Our doctors are drug dealers who make us sicker for profit. Our legal system is designed specifically to exploit us. Our allies and enemies have been misidentified. It's all upside down. There are people who think what I just said is crazy. As a person who gets disagreed with quite often, it's crucial to be constantly checking whether I might be the crazy one. Though mainstream consensus is overwhelmingly produced by manipulation and conditioning, not every consensus is. I might be the crazy one, but the person calling me might be the crazy one. It's us or them. I proceed to take inventory of my rationale, my premises, my mood, etc., and try to resolve every possible conflict with them that might be raised. If something is off, then the problem is probably mine. It's impossible to be perfect in reconciling for worldly accuracy, and I am certainly not perfect, but progress can be made, and we can improve our ability to deeply examine the structure of our own beliefs. It's good to check ourselves against the things of the world, things that are entirely human, but once done, it cannot be all we do. In the inversion, it is entirely possible to believe everything is actually its opposite, to check every worldly box for accuracy and, despite reconciling, still be the crazy one. That means that checking our facts and our sources for accuracy is not sufficient to disprove insanity. If we think it is sufficient, then we are insane. And in parentheses, sooner or later, words must have a real meaning. We pretend that the definition of crazy is doing the same thing repeatedly, expecting different results. We believe this because some scientists said it, or so we were told. But doing the same thing repeatedly and expecting different results is already the definition of practice. Assuming everything worldly checks out, if someone still thinks I'm the crazy one, well, that's something to take seriously. Could I be crazy and not know it? Of course. Crazy people don't know they're crazy. But if everything worldly checks out for me and checks out for the person who thinks I'm crazy, then it's just one of us or the other who qualifies as crazy. At that point, I recall that the people saying it or thinking it are scientific materialists who believe their spiritual life exists for the purpose of being reassured they're great people, no matter what evil they do and support. Most, parentheses all, are ultimately nihilists, resigned to a life guided by the acquisition of items and experiences, and many of the experiences are now virtual. They don't believe in a soul or in the afterlife, so they think it should be everyone's highest duty to purchase as many things as they can and try everything that sounds appealing. This is our conditioned purpose as humans, which is to say no purpose whatsoever. I know this because I used to be this way. To be clear, I am in no way opposed to people having flourishing, practical, worldly lives, but that wealth must be a product of a flourishing, godly moral lives, or it is for naught. This remains true even with obscene worldly wealth. We can look after worldly material interests without being scientific materialists. People have been doing this since ancient times. The conflict is the same as it ever was. Over time, within the inversion, the lives of the worldly will always, quote unquote, improve from the perspective of a scientific materialist while they age their way into the void. A little more stuff every year and a few more experiences. They will say they are happy. They will be, quote unquote, even happier once they have acquired the items they want, but don't currently have, and do things that sound like they'll be impressive to third parties in the future. There was literally nothing else aside from forming deep bonds with people trapped in the same inversion. This is worth remembering during those times when we are and will be taking incoming fire from people trapped in that inversion. We may care about them, but their knowledge and opinions are rooted in the most fundamental possible misunderstanding and are therefore incomplete, if not totally invalid. We don't have to let their positions or their responses affect our spirit or our thinking in any way. When I see typos, they totally throw me off. Rather than trying to pick apart and disprove their side in some argument, we can skip past the parentheses intentionally unprovable nonsense, the so-called facts of the world, and simply consider the life purpose of the people making the claims. These people are declaring their moral relativism. At bottom, they don't actually believe in a moral life because morality is meaningless and often antithetical to doing more things and getting more stuff, which for them is the purpose of life. How seriously can we take people who live to acquire more gadgets and do more unfulfilling or regrettable things? Why would we ever defer to their preferences or act in ways that appease them? The only reason would be because we hope to get more stuff and have more experiences. We cannot allow these people to dictate our reality. That would mean we are the crazy ones. Okay. So to place that in perspective of this Epstein files business, and in the piece I wrote yesterday, if you read it, you will see that I called the Epstein files experience a 12-day war, because that actually was 12 days between the FBI and DOJ release of this unsigned memo stating that the Epstein files had basically been fully released and there was nothing else there that they could give the public, and kind of the major decisive moment of the operation last night. The operation last night, doesn't matter what happened, why it happened, but it's going to go one of two ways, as everything will. Either it's going to force people who are still in that totally dependent mindset, believe whatever the authoritative source says. They know that we are the enemy and whatever is bad for us has to be the right thing. Okay, that's all they know. And as long as a piece of information is framed in that way, that it can be used to harm us and our cause and Trump, they can sell that idea. It doesn't matter what they say to people. Hey, you know what? All of you go and tell all our enemies that men can be women and women can be men. Okay? It's totally antithetical to the most fundamental and basic fact of nature. But no matter, it's going to be effective in attacking our enemies. So by all means, repeat this out in the world and help us build the world where that is true beyond question. And for real, no one's allowed to question it. That's where we are right now. And these people on the anti-Trump side have spent the last 2 weeks certain that Donald Trump is compromised in the Epstein files, and this is going to be the silver bullet that finally brings Trump down. And so the bot armies are out in support of that online. We can see and understand the tactics. And the psychological war component is to demoralize MAGA supporters, just people at home on their computer or on their phone trying to figure out what the hell is happening in the world. The bot armies exist to demoralize everyone, okay? All of you, the bot armies exist to demoralize you. That's why the influencer networks exist as well. They are trying to build for you, in your understanding, in your perception through the screen, they are trying to construct a world as it does not exist, okay? And all of this ends up in support of that, all of it designed to eventually make you think you are absolutely crazy. You can check all of your knowledge, all of your reasoning, everything you could possibly know, get it all perfectly sourced, be certain that you're right, and someone else can present an equally well-sustained and supported position that is in direct contradiction to yours. And that is because of this particular distinction, okay? And we have to then try to find a bottom. If we can't sort things out just by having an argument about our little facts and what they mean, then there's got to be something deeper, okay? At the bottom, what fundamentally are they getting right or wrong? Is the most important thing the world, the material world as it exists, as we are able to interact with it, and as we are to have a potentially more or less suffering-filled human existence while we're alive, okay? If that's all there is, the entire world is going to be perceived in a different way under a different set of priorities. If they want, but none of them, by the way, will admit that the science is their religion, that they are scientific materialists religiously, okay? They will not go out and admit that, and they will not admit that the acquisition of material goods is their highest priority. I mean, some will, of course, and they think that it's all survival of the fittest. It's all based on evolution. And of course it is, right? Because what is evolution? Well, it's the same as the bullshit about outer space. It's supposed to invert your understanding of your existence, okay? It is an inversion of religion. It is intentionally that way because it is trying to prop up the worldly realm as the only thing that matters. So they have an explanation for everything, and you have an explanation for everything, and theirs matches that worldview. Yours matches a worldview that's not retarded, okay? Because that is retarded. And again, I say that as someone who used to experience that very form of retardation. It just still remains retarded, okay? So if you are made to feel at any point like you are the crazy one, or like you are stupid for supporting the things you support, especially when it's strangers online that may or may not be human, just ask yourself, which of these two worldviews is this account supporting in its interactions with me? It's going to be worldly every time. And then as soon as we recognize that, we still engage anyway. Why? Okay. Honestly, why? There's no argument to be had with these people. You're not going to convince them in a calm and rational manner. People will seek you out and seek out information when they are ready to be convinced because they have finally realized that something's wrong. And they're not going to be convinced by the whole thing at one time, maybe, but over time, they might be. Okay. But if you get down to the bottom and ask yourself, which of these worldviews do I support? Okay. It turns out that these people on the other side are actually dead wrong in an inverted way about the most fundamentally important thing in the world. In fact, everything is backwards. Why would I let their opinions bother me? They don't even appear in my mind as a threat. If something like that was happening from someone I cared about, someone who was close to me, obviously my reaction would be different because I would be pre-biased toward sustaining our relationship, protecting my character or self-image or whatever my psychological motivations might be. That's a different scenario. I'm talking specifically about the political attack points and the campaigns waged by bots, by influencers, by media, by corporate systems of power when you get to major psyops like Black Lives Matter or COVID, for instance. And you can go all the way up to the top when it comes to those ones. But ultimately, the people arguing that masks might work, to use an example from 2020 and 2021, are already levels removed from understanding that forcing people to put cloths over their face to not save people from a disease that doesn't exist, well, it's hard to make a moral case for that one. It's hard to think, oh, yeah, Jesus would muzzle everybody. Sure. Who would Jesus muzzle? Oh, man. I mean, it's just like from jump, they're talking about the wrong thing. A, masks don't work. B, COVID, give me a break. C, you're allowed to force me. Like, skip A and B, okay? It's only C. And they're only wrong. And they can only be wrong over time because over time, as people awaken, everything goes back to the other side, all right? I think of it as an hourglass being turned over. And the sand just representing the people slowly heading to the other side, all right? And it is our purpose to never allow that hourglass to be turned back over. But it ain't going to be even full on our side anytime soon. It is still only flowing in that direction. And so we just continue to wait for it to flow. And we continue on the right side of these things, holding on to some principles, not depending on all this worldly bullshit, okay? Because everybody's all in their reputations this week, these last 2 weeks. They've been showing everybody how much they care about the children. That's what they're doing. They're caring about children while going after Donald Trump, just as they have been for 10 years, okay? How many people who are not Trump deranged were demanding the release of the Epstein files and going hard and aggressively after Trump to get him to release them? All sorts of ops online were firing off about that, okay? There are all sorts of people in like the pro-Nazi op, for instance, who declare themselves to be right-wing in every single way, but supporting Donald Trump. They know that Donald Trump is just like a servant of world Jewry, and therefore Donald Trump is also on the evil team. Like, they'll get involved in an op like this, but they are ultimately, they might support Trump against Biden, but that's just for political posturing, like everything else is for posturing. They don't actually want the change agent. They want a world that existed 100 years ago, and they want to have it exist again, even though that is directly in line with the regime playbook, okay? Because they are servants ultimately of the regime and of these moral concerns. We've been talking rather consistently over the last month, little over a month now, 5 weeks tomorrow, I guess, since actually, let's go with 5 weeks ago from today. We can start there. Friday the 13th of June was the Israel attack on Iran that began the 10.5-day war. War in quotes, of course. Okay. The next day, we have Donald Trump hosting the military parade in Washington, D.C. And we watched the Army unit be sworn in and swear their oath to support and defend the Constitution and the president on, something that was broadcast in numerous outlets nationwide, a viral event for certain, with the No Kings rallies going on the same day. So he has the military parade, a very clear show of strength to the global regime. Look at this. The military is on my side. Okay? Here, country, behold, the military is on my side. Right? Has anybody really questioned that? Certainly no Trump supporter has questioned that. Regime supporters believe that Joe Biden was commander-in-chief of the U.S. military from January 2021 to January 2025. That's ridiculous. And again, those people are the ones who thought they could finally get Trump over these last 2 weeks. So we have the military parade, big optical display, and then first thing Monday morning, war room begins. Eric Trump shows up, calls his dad the greatest rhino hunter in history, and then Tucker Carlson shows up to, I guess, red pill the normies about the neocons, the Republican establishment, Fox News, and maybe Israel. It's not a coincidence. And so 6 days later, we get, I think it was 6 days later, yeah, we get Top Gun Maverick in real life. And all of a sudden, Iran's nuclear threat is gone. All right. But the entire time, since that point, I said at that time, I thought that was a declaration of war on the regime. And then War Room on Monday was a declaration of war against the remaining members of the Republican establishment and of the neoconservatives, quote unquote, right-wing media, which is all honestly just left-wing, global regime, collectivist, statist media. All of these people were going to be put in the crosshairs. And it turns out tech as well. And what we've seen is narrative warfare waged directly in the faces of all the people who support the Republican establishment, support the neocons, support the warmongers, keep watching Fox News, and the tech bros. We see a constant cycle of it, going at them, destroying them, and anyone who supports them online in an anti-Trump fashion, because they'll all come out every time they think they can finally get Trump. Oh, this is going to be the issue. Trump is done. Trump is done. Go to, if you're on X, go to Mike Cernovich's Twitter and just type in Trump is done and see how many times he said it and delivered messages like that. It's funny. I did it the other day, and the top thing was Mike Cernovich in a video where it was from November 7th of 2020, where he was announcing that Trump would concede. Just a couple hours after the mainstream media had told us that Joe Biden won a very real election by getting 81 million real lawful American votes, which of course did not happen. Mike Cernovich immediately out there, Trump will concede. Did Trump concede? No, Trump has never conceded. And Mike Cernovich has never been right. He's just on one side of the mainstream divide. And because you risk your reputation more often on that side of the mainstream divide, there are fewer people over there who will do that. But it is quite profitable to be in that position, just on the other side of the mainstream divide, with fewer people to capture all the attention. Okay, so they get far more powerful than any of their thoughts would actually justify. And we've seen that pattern for far too long. So these people are now being exposed again and again and again and again and again. And I don't know how else people can see this stuff. As far as I'm concerned, nothing could be more obvious than watching people online take anti-Trump positions because Trump has set them up to do that, And then a week later, or a few days later, or however long it takes, it blows right back in their faces. And they lose their credibility. They lose their reputation. They begin to lose their audience. And of course that makes sense because they've steered everyone in the wrong direction every single time, playing on people's hatred for Donald Trump, which again is all based on their reputation. We'll get back to some of that in just a minute, but let's get to the timing of how the grand info op wrapped up last night. This was the first hint I got of it, and apparently the story had been floating around DC circles in the rumor mill for a couple of days about how there was going to be a major news media expose of Donald Trump's relationship to the convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. This is from Mediaite yesterday. Mark Halperin reveals that a blockbuster Trump-Epstein expose is about to drop. And he was on a show. He was doing some sort of podcast with a guy named Dan Turrentine and former Trump press secretary Sean Spicer. And he said one of the points of this platform in the age of transparency is to narrow the gap between elites and the people like the two-way community and myself. So already Mark Halperin trying to paint himself as just an average Joe with all his listeners, despite being a regime propagandist. He says, so let me share something with you that everyone, I say that in air quotes, everyone I know knows hasn't been publicly reported. Everyone I know believes a major newspaper, one of the top 3 newspapers in the country, is about to publish a piece about President Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, okay? Everyone I know knows that. And people in the White House know that too. When that story drops, if it drops today, and some people think it might, it could drive the day. And Turrentine replies, well, I know because it's been circulating on the left, and I've had to double check that this is not, in fact, total conspiracy theories. Donald Trump knew Jeffrey Epstein pretty well, and I believe that his early courting of Melania Trump involved Jeffrey Epstein, and that has been reported by mainstream outlets over the last 10 years. Alleged, I guess I want to be careful, replied Turrentine, and Halperin said, you've already been, I say with respect, somewhat careless. Okay, so they are, hold for processing. They are reporting that a major newspaper outlet is going to release a damning story about Donald Trump. And the DC rumor mill has been heavily anticipating this story's release. Oh, this is going to change everything. Let's bring on a guy to spread rumors. What is the implication there? Did Donald Trump procure Melania, his wife, from Jeffrey Epstein? Is that the implication? I don't care that major media outlets have reported something as true. Major media, for a long time, I should say, major media outlets always report things that are untrue and always have reported things that are untrue. That's why our history's false, okay? Fake news didn't start in the Trump era. Didn't start when we were born. It's been around for a long time. All that has changed is the medium of the disinformation, okay? Sometimes it's little spy networks that have someone in every town, and they travel around and make sure to know all the secrets. That's how it used to be in the totally analog world, okay? We can understand that. There are influence games that have been waged for millennia, okay? People talk about therapists now. People just go in, they see their therapist, they divulge all these critical details from their childhood through their adult life, all the terrible things they've done, all the terrible things that have been done to them. And then they have an entire inventory of things that can be used to exploit the patient at some point. All you have to think is that those systems have been digitized, and then obviously they are just part of the total sum of data that the machine has, okay? In the past, it was the confession booth. And hey, sorry, Catholics, but I mean, obviously that's true. There's one critical person. Either that priest is a good man and a good priest and loyal to and faithful to his duty, or he's not. And if he's not, then he's just recording everything everyone in town has ever done and felt guilty about. Okay? How many powerful people go in and tell their therapist or tell a priest at confession that they have cheated on their wife with a coworker, and they know that they can never allow it to get out because it will destroy their entire family? Okay? You tell that to your therapist or your priest, and what you have done is created into the world a weapon that can be used to destroy you if those are bad people. And so, of course, these things happen, and they've always happened. Why would we ever believe the fake news to be true? It's not true now. It wasn't true in history. All of it is just gone. Okay? So we're going to get this big news release from a major media outlet. There are 3 major papers in the country: the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the Wall Street Journal. Everything else is on a second tier, and I think that most people understand that. So it had to be one of the 3. We can think about the branding of each of these newspapers. From a regime perspective, all they are doing is disseminating information through a certain brand based on how likely it is that the audience is going to believe what is being told to them. Okay? So would it be effective to convince a wide audience of Donald Trump's wrongdoings with Jeffrey Epstein? Would it be easier to do that through the Washington Post, the New York Times, or the Wall Street Journal? Well, the Washington Post and the New York Times have A, reputations as being fake news, but B, and probably more importantly, have reputations of being extraordinarily anti-Trump. Whereas Murdoch media has tried to be explicitly pro-Trump, except to say when he's wrong, of course, in a very respectful way. We're being respectful to the president, but this is totally wrong, and we can't believe he's doing this. And everyone should be really, really mad, especially the global business community. That's what they're doing, okay? So they are releasing this story because they are the more Trump-aligned major news outlet. They have all the prestige and seriousness of the top 3 papers, but without the liberal bias and without the quite so obvious history of being just fake news. Okay? So the Wall Street Journal is the serious disseminator of this damning Trump story. We find that out. Oh, it's the Wall Street Journal? It's not the Washington Post or the New York Times. Wow, this must be serious if the Wall Street Journal is going to come after Donald Trump. Well, the Wall Street Journal is just like all the Con Inc. influencers and all the uniparty right media. Okay? It's anti-Trump whenever its positions are threatened, and it will agree to be Trump aligned to maintain its image with the Trump supporting base, because you can't just give away your branding as the serious outlet on the right. Wall Street Journal is not on the right, just like the politicians we were talking about before, just like the media figures and influencers we were talking about before. They're not on the right. They're globalists, they're statists, they're Zionists, and they're collectivists, and they're also neocons. So they're clearly not on the right, but their branding is on the right, and so we think it's on the right, and the public perception is that it will be more credible because this is a major newspaper on the right. This is the right's prestige newspaper. That's how it's viewed from the left, and it's also how it's viewed from the normie-con sphere, okay? They think that that is like the authoritative source when it comes to all things politics. Well, the Wall Street Journal said it, so, I mean, you know it's got to be true. It's not like it's just one of those liberal rags saying it. It's the austere Wall Street Journal, the very serious newspaper of people who really understand money. Yeah, they totally understand money. They just don't understand that it's all controlled by the central banks and that the economy is controlled from the top down in global fashion. Okay, but they totally understand money. We got to stop taking these people seriously at all. That's just what it is. Okay. And people are like, well, then our whole world's going to fall apart. You're not going to take any of it seriously? No, I'm not going to take any of it seriously. And my whole world's just going to stay exactly like it is. I've been doing it for a long time. By all means, take it seriously. See how it goes. Or you know what? Stop. Just stop taking it seriously for a few days and see if you miss anything. Eventually, you will feel like, oh, hey, I'm not stressed out about politics anymore. I mean, look at how ridiculous all this is. I was seeing things on a screen and having these extraordinary emotional reactions. It was just dominating my headspace and my day. Now, not a big deal. And I mean, you can see the scripting of the narratives at this point, can't you? And if you know the narrative's scripted, then it's obviously not a spontaneous, organic, naturally occurring series of events, and which means you can't treat it as though it was. Okay? It takes an entirely different paradigm for analyzing that and trying to figure out how to provide yourself useful and usable information on how to proceed through your life. Okay? And that is ultimately the point. I wrote this yesterday, and I would imagine that many of you saw it. I published it on Substack in the afternoon, and it is called Artificially Intelligent Flattery. Before we get to this, I'm just going to quickly check the chat and see how everyone is doing. That was quite an opening monologue. I guess you could call that a monologue. I mean, the whole show's a monologue, but you know what I mean. Okay, let us continue. We are going to continue with my article yesterday from Substack, and I apologize for reading my own work, but I have mixed feelings about it. I hope that this is worth your time, and I'm open to your feedback on that. If you would rather just read them and have the show focus on something else, well, then fine. But if that's your opinion, also understand the reason that I do it this way is so that the people who maybe aren't Substack subscribers, don't spend much time on Substack, still get the experience. That said, if you listen to my show with any regularity and you're not subscribed to my Substack, that's probably silly. I'm not saying you should be a paid subscriber. I appreciate it when people become paid subscribers, but you certainly don't have to do that. And pretty much everything is either free when I release it or free shortly after in a few days or whatever. So, okay. With that said, artificially intelligent flattery. Wait, darn it. That was not the one I wanted to do first. Although that one is fun. I just wrote that before bringing this here show online. So hold for processing for one moment because I have to pull up the proper article. How do I do it? So the article I meant to refer to is this one from Substack. 1 yard line written yesterday. And you will see in this main picture, you've got Mike Cernovich himself, Liz Wheeler from The Blaze. This is Libs of TikTok. And that is, of course, DC Drano. And this was the day that all of the Con Inc. grifters and Jack Posobiec got called into the White House. So to receive the Epstein binders that they made a very big deal about, and even though those turned out to be nothing, and actually let's just for a reminder have a refresher on what exactly I mean when I say they made a big deal about it. This is the Blaze's podcast host and like resident blonde, young blonde, from right after the Epstein Files event at the White House.
Thankful right now for Attorney General Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel and President Trump for doing what they promised and releasing this. You should be doubly grateful that the way that they're releasing this to the American people and exposing this corruption is through the new media. It's through us. We're doing it. That's one of the most encouraging and fantastic things that we've seen from the Trump administration.
There is absolutely nothing encouraging or fantastic about seeing people like Liz Wheeler be given special access to the administration. These people aren't even MAGA. They might support Donald Trump, but what they really support is the Republican establishment, because that establishment and the regime system is how they get their status, their wealth, and their power. There's an article rumored to be coming soon that supposedly reports the heinous crimes committed by Donald Trump, according to the Epstein Files. And to be clear, I wrote this before the Wall Street Journal story dropped, or at least before I saw it. I haven't actually checked the time. I think it was within the same hour. The time on the Journal article is 5:45 Eastern, and I would have to check the time on this article, but it was probably 6:45 Eastern, which would be 5:45 Central. It was probably within the same hour, but I wrote all this with no knowledge of what the article contained. That's the point. February 26, 2025, that's in reference to the Epstein Files photo above, a number of desperate grifters and Jack Posobiec participated in a public humiliation ritual. In response, people who call themselves MAGA stuck with the attention farmers and with the conceit of the Epstein Files. They were the very important people, these influencers. And even the VIPs get it wrong sometimes, not often, but sometimes. When they do, we simply forgive them and think of them as mostly right and nonetheless very important. We allow them to inform us despite being wrong all the time and hostile to the MAGA base, the people they pretend to be leading. And none of these people are leading anyone anywhere. The mainstream media has not gone away. It's been relocated to the screen in our pocket rather than the screen on the wall. We pretend it's different. We call them independent journalists. What a ridiculous misnomer. They are paid by the regime political corporation and its subsidiaries, so they have no true independence. Do we even need to pretend that journalism hasn't been inverted? The meaning of the word is what I'm referring to. They're supposed to be the objective recorders of our time, protecting us from evildoers, speaking truth to power, but they do none of those things. Why are they calling themselves independent journalists? Donald Trump's instigation and then navigation of the Epstein Files hoax have been masterful. The high-volume public conversation has allowed Trump and MAGA to pre-weather the storm. In the pre-Trump years, attempts to take down politicians would have received widespread buy-in from the public, assuming some part of the story had to be true. It's safe to assume the Trump side knew the article was coming at some point prior to the DOJ and FBI unsigned memo. They released it on a Sunday night, on a holiday weekend, and the story resulted in a regime-led battle online in an attempt to cleave Trump from his MAGA base through psychological warfare. The Trump side has waged a 12-day war on the Trump-Epstein series and won. We should prepare ourselves for some phony news, aka fake news. It will sound terrible, incite our emotional response, and turn out not to be true. When the article drops, the fake MAGA and faux independent influencer and podcast sphere will go crazy over it, thinking they've finally got Trump. And we've seen quite a bit of that. The attention farmers will make sappy, moralizing content. The call to action will be abandon Trump. These efforts will be supported with bot swarms. social media accounts with no real person attached, will be tasked with protecting critical narratives and attacking social media users through relentless harassment meant to demoralize them, cause them to quit. Recognize the moves being made. None of this is new. This is how the game has been played for 10 years at least. How many times have these same attention farmers attempted to divide Trump from his MAGA base? The difference this time is that they're using children's safety as a leverage point against Trump and MAGA, which is patently insane. The Uniparty and its supporters do not care about children's safety. The Uniparty has facilitated and managed a human trafficking operation. The Uniparty has overseen the proliferation of abortion in this country. The Uniparty and its supporters don't care about the children unless the children in question are their children, and even that is not guaranteed. Donald Trump has shut down industrial-scale human and child trafficking operations, if he has truly ended illegal immigration, a literal slave trade, drug trade, and weapons trade at our southern border. It seems he has. This isn't complicated. The people going after Trump have never stood for anything, never expressed independent ideas, and most of them have never been censored. As they go after President Trump now, their attempts are transparently and indisputably based on rumors they themselves have helped spread because they believed them. Why did they believe those rumors without any evidence? Do Stormy Daniels and E. Jean Carroll come to mind? Did they adopt those rumors about Trump, or did they simply claim to, in hopes of procuring social credits and fiat tokens online? Their business is capturing your attention for money. They legitimately get paid to make us retarded. They're quite literally attempting to bring down the people's president by waging fifth-generation warfare against the people. There is, as yet, no claim against Trump whatsoever, just an amorphous, fact-free rumor mill speculating on the sorts of things he probably did. Pedophiles are calling the people's president a pedophile on zero evidence. What kind of person would do that? The attention farmers are condemning Trump without even knowing what has been claimed against him. This happens every time. Why? The Uniparty right and its supporters have always wanted to eliminate Trump from the conversation. Doing so would allow them to preserve their reputations in polite liberal company while still slightly disagreeing. Polite disagreement with liberals is proof of one's right-wing bona fides. It should be seen as odd that they identify as right-wing. You could call them trans-political, despite being groveling statists and therefore left-wing. Defending Trump when he needs defense is a bad look for them. That's why they never do it. These people are not on the right, they are on the left. They are unquestionable supporters of the global regime because their power comes directly and solely from that system. The words they speak to describe their purported political positions are irrelevant. Their actions are consistently supportive of the Uniparty system as it exists. It doesn't matter that they claim to be anti-woke. Their regime-derived livelihoods and reputations are on the line. Why else would it be so important to eliminate Trump? Why would we see the attention farmers turning on Trump as straight shooters in any way? Why would we allow them to convince us to join their side by leaving Trump? This is the time they're right and Trump's wrong? No. They are literally the enemy. They have never been right about anything difficult. It is only ever reputation games. The attention farmers did not stand against the very deadly pandemic, the vaccines, the stolen election, the staged J6 riot, Putin's very brutal invasion, or the paragliding go-kart incident. They echoed the mainstream media and have repeatedly taken the regime's side against Trump in the information war, which is the only real war. They do it at every time. They do it at every or nearly every opportunity. You can observe their motives through time. It's always reputation enhancement. They're smarter than Trump, tougher than Trump, and more competent than Trump. They're still saying this 10 years in despite being wrong every previous time they've run this play. They have portrayed themselves this way for 10 years, and it has never been true. Trump has always been smarter, tougher, and more competent than the Con Inc. influencers. We do not have to pretend the enemy's stories should be taken seriously. We are immediately losing the game when we assume the story has to be somewhat true. It doesn't have to be true at all. The attention farmers are not trying to inform us. They're the same people who shamelessly told us to inject ourselves with a toxic experimental substance that couldn't protect us from a disease that couldn't kill us. They bent over and called Joe Biden president, abandoning our strongest warrior to side with the enemy in hopes of maintaining our reputations within our normie circles would be to fumble the ball at the 1 yard line. We're about to learn a lot about people. It's time they show us who they are again. And I said at the end as a caveat, I know, it also might be kayfabe. Yes, I get it. Thank you. All of these people could be running the most intricate and complicated and long-running white hat, red team, pro-Trump ops of all time, just trying to wake up the normies. But none of them seem that smart or that talented, so it seems awfully unlikely. Maybe they are all just the highest level military intelligence operators, and we don't know it, except for Posobiec. And they're just releasing a perfectly scripted scenario, okay? Maybe that's it. There's just no reason to believe that, okay? And all of their actions, especially the way they handle themselves online, indicate that they are obsessed with increasing their power, their status, and their wealth by receiving social credits, likes, follows, prestige on social media platforms, and fiat tokens online. They're trying to increase their fiat supply. And yes, I understand everybody who is getting paid in fiat is doing that to look out for their worldly needs. But it's not the priority over being a good person, except if you believe all there is are worldly needs. Okay. And so these people have been doing this the entire time. It really does behoove us to recognize that and to take it seriously. Which ones of these conservative media outlets are still good? I would suggest it's none of them. I would suggest it's been none of them for the entire time because they are literally functions of the enemy. Okay. These are corporate media outlets. And we pretend, Jesse Waters is super based. He's like practically a Q guy. Somehow Q followers are convinced that Jesse Waters is the mainstream mouthpiece for QAnon. It's absolutely bonkers. Okay. But maybe Jeffrey Epstein is a high-level military intelligence operator who has infiltrated the Fox News system and is a ghost in the machine. Okay? We can leave that as a possibility. But thinking it's for certain is a little bit crazy. When you can see that Murdoch media outlets like the Wall Street Journal are releasing these sorts of stories. And we will get to that story. At some point, we have to switch off the soap opera, or else we have to admit that we are lonely, middle-aged women at home in the middle of the day with no kids in the house, crying in front of the television, watching soap operas, okay? We are reading Soap Opera Digest if we cannot turn off the mainstream political soap opera. And it is a soap opera. It just is. This is the Wall Street Journal's damning article about Donald Trump and his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. The headline, Jeffrey Epstein's friends sent him bawdy letters for a 50th birthday album. One was from Donald Trump. Subheading, the leather-bound book was compiled by Ghislaine Maxwell, the president says the letter is a fake thing. So there is a picture of Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. Has that picture been around for quite a while? Yes, it has. Okay. It's been on the internet for a very long time. I don't know the provenance of that picture. I can't verify for you that that picture is real. We can assume it's real, but it doesn't have to be real. Okay. Are there info ops that last 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? If you know that your enemy, whether you're on our side or their side, if you know that your enemy has plans on what they want to do and you have access to those plans, well, you're going to come up with a counter plan. Okay. And so could Jeffrey Epstein have been an op the entire time? A Donald Trump takedown hoax op the entire time? Well, yes, it could have. I don't know that to be true, and I'm not speculating that it is true. Even if it is just a low probability possibility, we still have to understand that that's one of the possibilities, okay? That everything we've been told about Jeffrey Epstein, even potentially including his existence, is a fabricated media event for public consumption to eventually remove Donald Trump, okay? Just saying that's a possibility. This is clearly, Donald Trump is clearly the greatest threat the regime has ever seen and has been that way the entire time. And again, if you want to say it's all an act, it's all a soap opera, all good, all right? But this stuff is still happening in the world and it is still affecting the minds of people. So our response to it is still crucially important. And we need to understand that the information landscape that produces our fake news now was also producing fake news in 2003, 2006, 2008 and 2009, whenever the first Epstein indictment happened, and in 2019 and in 2023. The entire time it's been fake news. All right? Do they plan ops out that span this duration? I would suggest that, yeah, they probably do. Okay, so that's not something that you have to give a ton of weight to, but it's worth at least paying attention to and considering. Snowcat in the chat dropped 5 subscriptions in there, as did Beth. Thank you both very much. And I'm sure that the people following along and getting subscriptions for free, thank you as well. All right. Let us continue down our path to this Jeffrey Epstein, Donald Trump expose. It was Jeffrey Epstein's 50th birthday, and Ghislaine Maxwell was preparing a special gift to mark the occasion. She turned to Epstein's family and friends. One of them was Donald Trump. Maxwell collected letters from Trump and dozens of other Epstein associates for a 2003 birthday album, according to documents reviewed by the Wall Street Journal. And as far as we know, the history goes that was before anybody knew that Jeffrey Epstein was the predator and pedophile and honeypot and blackmail op and compromised Israeli Mossad asset or whatever. I'm saying that part of the story did not exist when this birthday card was said to have been sent or delivered or whatever. Pages from the leather-bound album, assembled before Epstein was first arrested in 2006, are among the documents examined by Justice Department officials who investigated Epstein and Maxwell years ago, according to people who have reviewed the pages. It's unclear if any of the pages are part of the Trump administration's recent review. The president's past relationship with Epstein is at a sensitive moment. The Justice Department documents, the so-called Epstein files, and who or what is in them are at the center of a storm consuming the Trump administration. Actually, it's not harming the Trump administration in any way. On Wednesday, after angry comments about how the files are a hoax created by Democrats, President Trump lashed out at his own supporters for refusing to let the matter go. The letter bearing Trump's name which was reviewed by the Journal, is bawdy, like others in the album. It contains several lines of typewritten text framed by the outline of a naked woman, which appears to be hands drawn with heavy marker. A pair of small arcs. Whoa. Sorry. Trying to expand my screen just one more time. A pair of small arcs denotes the woman's breasts, and the future president's signature is a squiggly Donald below her waist, mimicking pubic hair. What? Mimicking pubic hair. These are prestige journalists, the best writers in the world, the best writers in the news business, mimicking pubic hair. I should call the episode Mimicking Pubic Hair. The letter concludes, "Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret." In an interview with the Journal on Tuesday evening, Trump denied writing the letter or drawing the picture. "This is not me. This is a fake thing. It's a fake Wall Street Journal story," he said. "I never wrote a picture in my life. I don't draw pictures of women. It's not my language. It's not my words." And people are making fun of him for saying, "I never wrote a picture." I think that's amusing. But it seems like it is, if his signature is mimicking pubic hair, then he would actually be writing the picture. Just saying. He told the Journal he was preparing to file a lawsuit if it published an article. "I'm going to sue the Wall Street Journal just like I sued everyone else," he said. Allegations that Epstein had been sexually abusing girls became public in 2006 when he was arrested that year. Epstein died in 2019 in jail after he was arrested a second time and charged with sex trafficking conspiracy. Justice Department officials didn't respond to requests for comment or address questions about whether the Trump page and other pages of the birthday album were part of the agency's recent documents review. The FBI declined to comment. So they don't even have a confirmation internally that the Justice Department has the album and its contents as part of their documents under review. Okay. So I would think then that this isn't even part of the Epstein files. They can't even be sure that it's part of the Epstein files. And I think that that has some bearing, maybe not much, but some bearing on how we see the source of this information to be, how we perceive the source of that information. The existence of the album and the contents of the birthday letters haven't previously been reported. So in 22 years, none of this has been reported. It existed. It wasn't reported. It existed while the fake president was in office, and it wasn't reported. It wasn't reported while the regime's DOJ remained in place. And you can have your own thoughts about Comey and Wray. There is a theory out there that Comey and Wray are both white hats, and all of this is a long-running white hat op going back all the way to catching Hillary Clinton in Russiagate, okay? And that white hat op would be so complex and such a scripted story that it would also imply Barack Obama and Joe Biden were in on it. Now, I think that's an awful lot to swallow, but I don't know that I can rule it out completely. Regardless, people have been going over all of this for a very long time. That it hasn't been reported, that no one has ever known about this, is a little crazy, if it is actually true. And I don't suspect that it is true. The albums had poems, photos, and greetings from business people, academics, Epstein's former girlfriends, and childhood pals. according to the documents reviewed by the Journal and people familiar with them. Among those who submitted letters were billionaire Leslie Wexner and attorney Alan Dershowitz, people who are already tied to Epstein. The album also contained a letter from a now deceased Harvard economist, one of Epstein's report cards from Mark Twain Junior High School in Brooklyn, and a note from a former assistant that included an acrostic with Epstein's name, Jeffrey O. Jeffrey, everyone loves you, fun in the sun, fun just for fun, remember, don't forget me soon, Epstein, you rock, you are the best. A former assistant. Okay. Epstein, why didn't you name the assistant? Why don't we get to know the name of Jeffrey Epstein's assistant? Epstein was Wexner's money manager at the time, the longtime leader of, and again, what does that mean if Jeffrey Epstein is an intelligence construct? Okay, that means that Les Wexner's money was managed by an intelligence construct, and an intelligence construct who isn't actually a money manager isn't actually managing anyone's money, which means Leslie Wexner's money would have been managed by the intelligence agencies. And I would suggest that it's possible every single billionaire is in that situation, okay? Especially once you think about their existence as these kind of, these fronts for these massive corporations, these massive tech enterprises. Bill Gates just said the other day that he's going to donate even more of his money when he dies. All those billions are just going to go away. His family's not going to get them. They're going to go to the NGOs. They're going to go to the charities, to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They're going to save the world by pumping poisons into them in Africa. Okay? So he's not going to pass his money along to his children. It's just going to go back into the world. It's the perfect communist, environmentalist, vaccinologist thing to do with your money, because everything they do is predicated on your belief that they are intending to do the greatest good and that their money to philanthropies and to charities and to NGOs is in furtherance of the greater good. That's a lot of there are a lot of billionaires who give, I think the Patagonia billionaire is an example of this, but there are a fairly substantial number of billionaires who have promised to give all their money away when they die. Oh, we can't take it with us. And of course, we don't have an afterlife. And our families, they're just going to be fine with whatever small amount we give them. And of course, people will be fine. But we're just going to give the rest of it back into the earth, back into the machine, back into the system, back to the people. It's all very heroic in that worldview, okay? It also suggests that maybe they didn't come by all that money in the way they are portrayed to have come by all that money, all right? Maybe they're not the world-class geniuses we've been led to believe they are. But in any case, understanding them as the fronts, the facade of these grand organizations, these enterprises that are, they call them world champions. And they call them national champions. If they're American, if it's an American, that would be a national champion. Like I can't think of the name offhand. I don't know why I'm blanking on it. But the founder and CEO of Starbucks. Starbucks is a national champion. Starbucks is the number one coffee company and coffee shop in the nation. Okay. And I'm not saying it's the best. I'm just saying by volume and by number of stores and the rest of it, it is the McDonald's of coffee. Okay. That's just what it is. That's a national champion. If it was being looked at from the perspective of the entire world and Starbucks was the biggest in the world, and I think it is, then it's a world champion. Okay. And we hear that kind of lingo used quite a bit more lately. So we have regime construct corporations, okay, which present to themselves a present to the public one side of their business. This is what we do as our business operation. And then behind that, they have an entirely different internal government-facing business that helps to implement the global regime's agenda, whether it's through their employee hiring practices, their data practices, their, what do they call them? ESG requirements. Okay. All of these things are control and manipulation tools used by the global regime to get corporations to fall in line. Okay. So the CEOs are just as much a front of those organizations as they are for the tech companies. Okay. And the corporations, the brick and mortar corporations, just like the digital corporations, are all tied into that global regime and all subservient to the global regime and to the intelligence agencies that run the whole thing. Okay. So if your money is controlled by an intelligence construct, your money is controlled by an intelligence organization, and your service to that organization in furtherance of the regime agenda is why you get paid all that money. Okay. I can't imagine very many of these guys made their money through their business acumen and their world-changing inventions. And we know that's not true because they have adopted the model of so many other companies, used their size to avoid any legal accountability, or just bought those companies out and bought them off in order to centralize, monopolize, and control more information. Okay. And they do that because the government has their back. So again, we're not talking about competent business acumen, just being able to get things done. We're talking about a situation where they have become part and parcel of a rigged system. Okay. So to say that Jeffrey Epstein managed people's money, I don't know what that could even mean. Let's continue. I hope all that made sense. That was a longer tangent than I expected it to be. All right, pausing for 1 second, having a look at the chat. Let us keep going. In the Substack chat, Katie said, maybe we should all just sign our names with extra squigglies to mimic pubic hair from now on in support. You could do that. But if you did it with your signature, you would be writing that picture. Epstein was Wexner's money manager at the time. The longtime leader of Victoria's Secret wrote a short message that said, I wanted to get you what you want, so here it is. After the text was a line drawing of what appeared to be a woman's breasts. Oh, these men. Wexner declined to comment through a spokesman. Wexner's spokesman previously told the Journal that the retail mogul, quote, severed all ties with Epstein in 2007 and never spoke with him again, end quote. A lot of people say that. Dershowitz's letter included a mock-up of a Vanity Unfair magazine with mock headlines such as, who was Jack the Ripper? Was it Jeffrey Epstein? What a joke. He joked that he had convinced the magazine to change the focus of an article from Epstein to Bill Clinton. Dershowitz, who represented Epstein after his first arrest, said, it's been a long time and I don't recall the content of what I may have written. The book was put together by a New York City bookbinder, Herbert Weitz, according to people who were involved in the process. Weitz, who died in 2020, listed Epstein as a client on his website in 2003. And we're just going to, again, have to take their word for that. And they're reporting on that. I don't know what could substantiate a claim like that. Are they saying they have a snapshot of his website from 2003 and we just have to assume that is a real and authentic snapshot that was archived at the time and not just created and entered into the internet yesterday? Got to assume it's true, right? They're a very serious news outlet. They get things wrong sometimes, but what are you going to do? Not get any news? I mean, people actually make that argument. What are you going to do if you stop believing the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times and the Washington Post? Are you just not going to have any information at all? Is your whole world just going to collapse inward? There's nothing, the political soap opera has ended. Now there's nothing to watch on TV. Oh my gosh, the world is ending. Consider the commitment to the television that would ever put you in a position to think that way. That has got to be a difficult way to live. Just got to say. Let's go back to this. It isn't clear how the letter with Trump's signature was prepared. Inside the outline of the naked woman was a typewritten note styled as an imaginary conversation between Trump and Epstein, written in the third person. Voiceover. There must be more to life than having everything, the note began. Donald. Yes, there is, but I won't tell you what it is. Jeffrey. Nor will I, since I also know what it is. Donald, we have certain things in common, Jeffrey. Jeffrey. Yes, we do, come to think of it. Donald. Enigmas never age. Have you noticed that? Jeffrey. As a matter of fact, it was clear to me the last time I saw you. Trump. Doesn't say Donald this time. That's weird. Why did the Prestige newspaper change this? Is the letter confused about whether it's using Donald or Trump in these reprinted sentences from this letter we have not seen? But Trump says, a pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret. And then it goes into backstory to burnish any thought they may have created that Donald Trump is surrounding himself with nefarious characters because he himself is nefarious, despite Donald Trump being one of the most famous men in the world for 40 plus years, and they've got nothing on him. Nothing on him. Doesn't drink, doesn't smoke. They got nothing on him. They've tried to destroy him for a decade since he went into politics. And it hasn't worked at all. They've got nothing on him. E. Jean Carroll, ridiculous. Okay? Stormy Daniels, ridiculous. How far back do we have to go? Bankrupting Atlantic casinos, Trump University, all of it's ridiculous. Okay? Even if somehow those stories back in the 80s and 90s had been real and reported authentically, still wouldn't make a difference about what Trump's doing today. Be good reason to doubt his character back then. He seems to be a different character right now. Did they swap him out and replace him with a clone or a body double? People say that. Yeah, I don't know about that, but he's a different person. Internally, I know how that can happen because it's happened to me. I'm sure it's happened to many of you. Those, like the things that I did 20 years ago, don't represent the person I am now. Okay. And Trump, flawed though he may be, is still our side's strongest warrior. And he is still the catalyst to an awakening to truth and to God, like we've certainly not seen in my lifetime. And I would guess not your lifetime either. And I would argue potentially not since the time Jesus Christ walked the earth. And that's an awfully long time. Okay. So I don't think that you can just simply discount that and think that he hasn't been operating or just to reset here a bit. Understanding that that is who Trump is now, even if his character was something we wouldn't approve of back in the 80s and 90s, when these terrible things were said to have happened, that still would not be who he is now. Okay. And we would have to keep those things separately. And everybody, obviously, that's a matter of personal interpretation and personal morality. Some people will lean different ways on that. I think that I don't think any of that is substantiated. I certainly don't have any evidence of it on my own that conforms to direct knowledge, first principles, and sound logic. So I have no basis for believing those things. And to condemn somebody when I have no basis to believe they've even done the bad things they're claimed to have done, well, then I would become the bad person in that situation. So I choose not to do it, especially when I can see the person leading so many people in the right direction. All right. The wording of this article is ridiculous. The letter that, or birthday card that Trump is said to have written sounds ridiculous. These sentences sound like they were designed to hit just the right spots in this, in the info op that they have been running, the rumor mill and the rumor mongering about Donald Trump, the suggestion that he could have done X, Y, or Z based on the fact that we know Jeffrey Epstein was X, Y, Z, and that he knew Donald Trump back then, and that's why Trump doesn't want the files out. We've seen all the attack points. We know where they are. And the style of that story was very much in line with those attack points. And I don't think that's a coincidence. But let's keep moving. So this is the War Room's Natalie Winters on X, formerly Twitter. Not sure if there was a buzzing in the ears. My phone makes my microphone make strange sounds sometimes, and sometimes they track into the audio of the show. So if you hear anything strange, it's quite likely that. A strange static or blipping, or I don't know. Sometimes it's like a high-pitched sound. Okay, so Natalie Winters on X, formerly Twitter, says, wow, the Wall Street Journal reporter behind the Trump Epstein story was conveniently behind bogus Stormy Daniels reporting too. He was credited for, quote, helping set in motion the first criminal prosecution of a former president. And they are talking here about a man named Joe Palazzolo, who was one of the two writers of the Stormy Daniels piece. He was also one of the two writers of this Wall Street Journal piece. Here is a man named James Fishback, who is, I guess, kind of popular on X, formerly Twitter. I don't know much of anything about him, but I do know that this post makes a lot of sense, and that is why I'm sharing it. He says, 6 questions for the idiots at the Wall Street Journal. How on earth did you just suddenly find a letter from 2003? Who gave it to you? This is number 2. What were the terms? When? Number 3, why didn't you publish the letter in full? Number 4, President Trump's always been known for writing personal letters by hand. Can you cite a single example of him sending a typewritten note? Number 5, he is also known for his straightforward and direct writing style, just like his speaking style. Can you cite one other example of him writing in whimsical riddles like this letter you suddenly found? Number 6, don't you find it odd that this letter magically appears now, not before 2016, 2020, or 2024, but right when the Democrats are trying to weaponize Epstein against Trump? And he says he's canceling his Wall Street Journal subscription. That is an absolutely disgraceful article. And that may well be true, but hey, man, why did it take you this long to cancel your Wall Street Journal subscription? That is already a little sketchy, if you ask me. He asks a good question there in number 6, and I kind of alluded to it in my piece from yesterday, and I actually would take it a step further than he does. I think that Trump knew this story was coming out, or that he knew this story was still in the hopper. This was still what the regime thought would be one of their trump cards. Or again, it's always possible that this is just a two-sided op that is playing out exactly as designed. But Donald Trump clearly preempted this news cycle by releasing the FBI DOJ unnamed, unsigned letter on Sunday evening of 4th of July weekend. All right. That started this whole thing. And because he started this whole thing, and it took 12 days of this before the story dropped, finally, from the Wall Street Journal, that was rumored about in advance, which meant the entire rumor mill was told about it. Prepare for this. Okay. This is how it's going to be. Get ready to go. Go all in on your anti-Trump Epstein takes. We've got something big coming. Okay. People knew that, and info ops spawned off of that. If Trump preempted this story coming out, what does that mean for the past? Because if they had something damning on Donald Trump, why wouldn't they have put it out last year or during the Republican primary? Why wouldn't they have put it out right after they demoralized the shit out of everybody with the stolen election, into the fake certification, into the fake inauguration, and immediately in J6, should mention as well, that was a total demoralization. And it was one of those things where they recruited our friends and family to help them demoralize us. Okay. Which should show you that your friends and family are still under the sway of the enemy. All right. They might not want to be on the side of the enemy, but they don't even understand that they are on the side of the enemy. So they're certainly not going to change, because as far as they know, you're the enemy. All right. So demoralization after demoralization after demoralization. If you really want to drive the stake into the vampire's heart, why wouldn't you release your most damning piece of information when he is at his weakest, so that you can finally finish him? And of course, it's because the information is not damaging, and it's not damaging because Trump preempted it. The reason everybody reacted to that story last night with mostly a shrug, I mean, the mainstream media is still going after it. The anti-Trump podcast sphere, influencer sphere, social media sphere, all still going after it. Okay? They bought it hook, line, and sinker. So it worked on someone. It worked on a big subsection of the American public. The same stuff that every regime narrative works on. And anyone who's anti-Trump, even if they're a little skeptical about the story itself, they'll still pile on where they can, because they think that there's blood in the water. They don't realize it's their blood, but we're talking about the mentally retarded. Okay. And I don't mean they are mentally disabled. I mean that they are probably college educated and wannabe elites. They're just obsessed with all worldly goals, and therefore they are wrong about absolutely everything. If that's not retarded, if being wrong about everything while having a perfectly functional, we are told, brain is not retarded, then nothing is retarded. Okay. And things are retarded. Oh, man. Where were we? Fish back. So the dates, just to conclude on the dates. They should have released this at numerous times over the past 5 years. If we have real elections, why didn't they release it right before the real election? They could have made it such a damaging story that they could have given us a false election result, if they have control over that system, and people would have believed it. And they would have believed it was all because of the Epstein story. Instead, it's happening now. And it was instigated by Donald Trump. And it's been navigated by Donald Trump. And we talked last week about the good cop, bad cop thing. You swing people back and forth for a while, and they realize, oh, over time, one of these sides is normal, and one of these sides is absolutely insane. Normal, insane. Normal, insane. And if you let that play out over the course of 12 days, All the people who are worried about the insane side and don't want to spend that much time on it are going to resist the story. They already know something's wrong. Okay. Now, again, as I said in the article yesterday, everyone should have known something was seriously wrong on February 26th when those idiots went to the White House and made a big deal about the Epstein files. At that point, you should have known there's a rug coming. All right. And yet, in the last 12 days, it wasn't about a rug. It was just about whether or not they had damning evidence on Donald Trump. And it played out. It swung back and forth over the course of 12 days. And when they go in for their major strike, it hits absolutely nothing. They didn't even get the whole day's news cycle. Isn't that wild? Donald Trump is just chilling out in the White House, getting standing ovations the day after that happened. Look at the optics. Nobody believes that shit. The entire country is going to see what he's doing. Okay? And even the Trump deranged are going to see it, and they're not going to tell you that they understand what it means. But deep in there somewhere, that little part of their consciousness that is saying to them, hey, maybe this is a bridge too far. That little part is still working. Okay. And they'll feel insecure about the beliefs. They'll go hard after them because these people are nuts, but they'll be very insecure about them. And that is really important. I was saying to Brian this morning on Badlands Daily, because I said this, we've waged this 12-day war and won. And he's like, well, I don't know if we're out of the woods yet. I was like, okay, yes, you are absolutely right. This story is not over. But in terms of being out of the woods, what does that mean? That means that we have reached a point past which there isn't anybody who's going to turn around and be like, oh, yeah, they got him. This piece of Trump evidence, this actually is true. They've already blown it. It's over, okay? And you can allow the next piece of evidence to come out, and it's going to be even worse than this, although it might be more salacious. It might be more dramatic. It might be more extreme, but it's not going to be more believable. Again, I wrote that article yesterday before I knew the contents of the Wall Street Journal article. Okay. So I was taking at least some small risk there. What if it had been totally damning evidence that they had released? What if they said they had, one of their reporters had been given access to a videotape of blah, blah, blah? That would be a significant level above the story that we actually got. Okay. And so if it was that, then the blowback for stating in advance that the news would be fake would be more severe, right? It's dependent on the drama of what's being claimed. But where was I? Darn. I just lost my train of thought there. Talking about the article yesterday. The dates, the rollout, Donald Trump preempting the entire thing, the narrative swinging back and forth. I think I was probably somewhere in there. I believe we are out of the woods, okay? Because the narrative, there's no one who's going to go to the insane side and think anything more at this point than, oh, they're insane. Oh, these are the people who obviously aren't insane. Oh, they're insane. Oh, these are the people who probably aren't insane, okay? And eventually, you can only define yourself as the one thing if you want to keep on being sane, okay? They're insane on that side. They are not comprehending reality properly, all right? They think everything is the opposite of what it is. And again, we come back to, well, it's either me, the one making that claim, or it's them, the one on that end of my claim. Maybe I'm the crazy one. Okay, what do they believe in? What is their most foundational, fundamental belief? It's that the purpose of life is acquiring stuff? Okay, well, they're clearly the insane ones, right? That's antithetical to the purpose of life. Pursuing material wealth, status, and power is the opposite of pursuing a good, moral, godly life, okay? You can have the worldly stuff, just not in a way that compromises the moral and godly stuff. Couldn't be simpler. But you can only serve one master. And they're serving the wrong master. They're the insane ones. So you don't want to generally associate yourself with that side once you have recognized that side. And the pendulum, the swinging back and forth, the good cop, bad cop, helps people recognize that side. And upon recognizing that side, then the solution is opt out and the whole thing's over. I would suggest to you that people have opted out and that the whole thing is over. Okay? They might release more information and we will laugh and we will make memes. And some of the liberals in our lives will get mad at us and they'll say, how can you stick with him after this piece of news has been released? Silence, communist. Okay? That's what you say. Silence. Just stop. All right? You've never been right. Not one time. They've been trying to get Donald Trump like this for 10 years. All the people telling me this story are the people who lie to me nonstop intentionally for the purpose of exploiting me. Why would I believe any of this? Why are you, commie, believing any of this? Okay? Don't even attempt to make it about our character in how we are operating epistemologically. Okay? We're the ones on solid ground. There is no solid ground over there. They have no proof of anything, and they are calling the people's president a pedophile in hopes of removing him from office. That's a coup. Okay? That is a color revolution. That is an attempted takeover of the American presidency and the entire system because they are losing it. Now, again, none of this is going to come to fruition. You think that they're going to seize control of the presidency and then control the U.S. military? No. All right? They're already screwed. And whatever stories they come up with are not going to appeal to anybody. All right? They've already blown it. And so to that extent, I would say, yes, my good buddy CanCon is correct that the story has not concluded. So if you mean we're not out of the woods yet, I get it with you on that. But in terms of out of the woods, the way I look at it, like we're out of the woods. Like if we are 10 feet from the edge of the woods, I guess we're not technically out of the woods. But unless there's a bear chasing right behind us, we're probably going to make it. You know? So I don't think there's a bear chasing behind us. I have no reason to believe, based on a 10-year history of info ops, that the bear is right behind us, chasing us, and about to overcome us. I do not think there is any chance of that happening. It has not happened at any point. And if it did happen, think back to many of these moments, these stressful moments that we have had in the past. The day the election was announced for Joe Biden, okay? The day that the certification deadline in the states passed, January 6th, the fake inauguration, the vaccine mandates, Afghanistan, Ukraine, the fake midterms, the Ron DeSantis op, the paragliding go-kart incident, all of these events that have made people feel really nervous. Oh, this is bad. Something bad's happening. Oh, man, things were going so good, but now the bad thing has happened. Here we are. What bad thing happened? Now, I'm not saying people didn't make bad decisions. I'm not saying people didn't get hurt, but the project's still marching forward, okay? And everybody who has stayed in line with that has been successfully marching forward and missing all of these psyops. And that's the whole thing. The whole thing is literally having more people who don't succumb to regime psyops. That's what the awakening is, which is why the point of it all is not getting hoodwinked, okay? Ever. If you can refrain from getting hoodwinked, then the psyops don't work. If everyone was able to refrain from getting hoodwinked just by focusing God and applying a basic epistemology, the whole thing would be over. It really is that easy. And we don't do it. Why don't we do it? Because we want to acquire stuff. This is Jack Posobiec on the War Room this morning, just adding a little more on to the reporting drama as it is going back and forth.
Starting to think, Steve, I'm starting to think, I put this up on Twitter last night, that the source has something to do with former elements of the Department of Justice. I tweeted out last night that it sounds like their source might be Ghislaine Maxwell over some prison phone or something like this, because they don't have the letter. The White House asked for the letter. They wouldn't produce the letter. They wouldn't show this thing. They don't know where this is coming from. They've got a source. They claim it's Ghislaine Maxwell, maybe. I don't know. Then you've got the great Susan Crabtree. She sends me a message. She's got it up now as well over at Real Clear Politics, saying that the author of this report at the Wall Street Journal is a former member of the Department of Justice who was directly tied to who? Glenn Simpson, the founder of Fusion GPS. And we know that Fusion GPS, the Steele dossier, this also came up through the Wall Street Journal, through so many of these sources, so through many of the same channels. So I would love to see that if there is this lawsuit, if it does go forward, and I certainly hope that it does, I want to see the names. I want to see this connection. So the individual's name here, Joe Palazzo. Joe Palazzo is someone we need to look at. Listen to this. Joined the Wall Street Journal in 2010 from trade publication Main Justice, where he covered the U.S. Justice Department. He was over at the U.S. Justice Department prior to all of this. And, you know, it's really, really interesting. The Main Justice was Glenn Simpson's wife's publication. Simpson founded Fusion GPS. So there's a lot of connections, very strange connections here, Steve.
Fusion. Natalie's going to be with us. She's going to.
So now there is a direct connection to Russiagate and to the Steele dossier. And Donald Trump has been saying for the last 2 weeks that the Epstein files are akin to the Steele dossier. They are bringing the Steele dossier back around. We are getting a full rerun for a mass audience. This is like re-releasing Star Wars. That's basically what's going on right now. We're having the biggest, most important movie. I don't think Star Wars is the most important movie, just to be clear. The biggest, most important movie re-released. Okay, so we now have a real-world living example that people just lived through of the regime setting up totally flimsy, if not outright false, quote-unquote, evidence against Donald Trump, which is what the Steele dossier was. And it was outright false. And they've done it a million times. But now we have one big, dramatic example of that. And all the people who've been going off about Donald Trump and he's this and he's that over the last few weeks and what's in the files and blah, blah, blah. How do they look now? How do they feel now? What is their strategy now? They're still going to hate Trump? I mean, Dave Smith, that dumbass, was out there the other day all mad. Oh, I'm not ever supporting Donald Trump again. This is not what I voted for. Elections aren't real, bro. Wake up. Let's continue. But anyway, the point is, we're tied right back into to the Russiagate scandal right now, 1 week after John Solomon came out and announced, hey, Rico Grande's coming. It's not a coincidence. Here is Donald J. Trump on his website, Truth Social, last night after this totally damaging article was released. And this article has done no damage whatsoever. There's no damage done. You can't go online and think, oh man, Trump's getting it really bad. Unless you're on like Blue Sky or the MSNBC website. Here's Trump. The Wall Street Journal and Rupert Murdoch personally were warned directly by President Donald J. Trump that the supposed letter they printed by President Trump to Epstein was a fake, and if they print it, they will be sued. Mr. Murdoch stated he would take care of it, but obviously did not have the power to do so. And you have to wonder which Mr. Murdoch. It sounds like Rupert, but I believe his son Lachlan, and I don't remember the name of his other child, run the company. Rupert Murdoch is basically the lead character of the HBO show Succession. It was essentially modeled after Rupert Murdoch. Let's continue. And worth saying, by the way, Trump is posting on Truth Social, writing in the third person, referring to himself specifically again and again as President Trump. Just something to take note of. I'm not sure what it means. The editor of the Wall Street Journal, Emma Tucker, was told directly by Caroline Leavitt and by President Trump that the letter was a fake. But Emma Tucker didn't want to hear that. Instead, they are going with a false, malicious, and defamatory story anyway. President Trump will be suing the Wall Street Journal, News Corp, and Mr. Murdoch shortly. The press has to learn to be truthful and not rely on sources that probably don't even exist. President Trump has already beaten George Stephanopoulos and ABC, 60 Minutes and CBS, and others, and looks forward to suing and holding accountable the once great Wall Street Journal. It has truly turned out to be a disgusting and filthy rag, and writing defamatory statements like this shows their desperation to remain relevant. If there were any truth at all on the Epstein hoax as it pertains to Donald Trump, this information would have been revealed by Comey, Brennan, Crooked Hillary, and other radical left lunatics years ago. It certainly would not have sat in a file waiting for, quote unquote, Trump to have won 3 elections. This is yet another example of fake news. And he mentions the elections again. In the course of this Epstein files 12-day war, this little saga that we've witnessed, we have seen Trump come back to repeatedly the Steele dossier and Russiagate and the stolen 2020 election. And he mentions it again here. He's won 3 times. Has he won 3 times? Yeah, he's won 3 times. And so again, we have a post that he knows is going to go viral, and it contains that non sequitur point specifically to include that in the message. And it works. Of course it works. It works every time. He knows it's going to work. It can't not work. That's what it means when you are the loudest megaphone, have the loudest megaphone in the world. Everything he says and does, people scrutinize and pay attention to immediately. All right. And, you can love that or hate that, but it is that way. Here he is following up. Based on the ridiculous amount of publicity given to Jeffrey Epstein, I have asked Attorney General Pam Bondi to produce any and all pertinent grand jury testimony subject to court approval. This scam perpetuated by the Democrats should end right now. So it's a scam. Pam Bondi is tasked with producing or going to the courts and asking the courts if she can produce the grand jury testimony to the public. Now, Brian and I also this morning discussed, he had a former military man and former attorney, I think Marine, and former attorney for the federal government or some federal government employee on his show last night, who said that it was extraordinarily unlikely for a grand jury testimony to be released. That almost never happens. I guess we'll see. I wouldn't suspect that Donald Trump won't get that done. Although the counterpoint is playing this card, having this be your strategy. Hey, Pam Bondi asked the court to release this grand jury testimony. Well, now Trump's taken the story and said, Epstein files? No, the Epstein files don't matter. Let's go to the grand jury testimony where the actual claims were made. Okay. And let's find out what those claims were. And let's see what the real basis for this entire saga really is. Will the courts do that? Donald Trump was the bot armies and the deranged people online were saying that Donald Trump was a pedophile and that everyone who stood up for him was therefore also a pedophile or a protector of pedophiles. What will they say when the courts are the ones preventing them from getting the information? And then how will the courts respond? And I guess we'll probably get to see that. I mean, who knows? I don't know how the info op is going to emerge, but it feels like that would be one of those necessary components, like a waypoint that you would have to reach in this story as it goes on. And so I do think that we will, I think that that's going to be seeing the online anger about the court system unwilling to release this stuff. It's going to be a big deal. Okay. And it probably should be a big deal. You know, they're trying to, they say they're trying to protect people by hiding grand jury testimony. But the point is, the government is a function of the people. It's supposed to be a government of, by, and for the people, which means the people have to be informed about everything the government does. And if that's too big because our government's too big, then the problem is our government is too big. You can't just ignore the people's right to know what the government is doing, because if the people don't know what the government is doing, then they can't control the government. And then it's not a government of, by, and for the people. And maybe that is just an unrealistic expectation to have that, but it still happens to be the expectation. And so, you know, the anger that people exhibited over the release of the Epstein files when it comes to Donald Trump, you would think any of that was real, authentic, and legitimate would be quickly redirected toward these courts to get that information out. Will that happen? I don't know, but I have a pretty good reason to believe that I'm on solid ground thinking that's the play. Let's continue. Pam Bondi responded just right after Donald Trump's post there on X, formerly Twitter, saying, President Trump, we are ready to move the court tomorrow to unseal the grand jury transcripts. Now, I would imagine that Pam Bondi has filed that, though I'm not certain. Okay, it's past 5 p.m. on the East Coast. So the business day, technically, certainly for government employees, is over. So is it possible? Sorry, my dog is barking in the background. I'm not sure if you can hear him. Is it possible that she will still file these today at some point? Yes, I suppose she could have a court filing that doesn't come out until tonight, but I'm sure that she is on it as Trump asked, and she said she would do. I have every reason to believe that she will do that. And so hopefully that is now in the works. And then we'll see over next week, public pressure build on the court system, I would expect. And then we'll see ultimately whether or not the public is deemed entitled to further information. And I don't know that they will ultimately deem the public is entitled to that information. But what are you going to do? Let me take a quick break and do one of these here Rumble ads. We didn't do any on Tuesday. So this is for Rumble Premium. Next Friday afternoon's episode will be a subscriber stream. So if you are a paid subscriber on Substack, you'll be the only type of person with access to watch that live stream live as it happens. And that will be available for paid subscribers on Substack. It is also available on Rumble if you are a member of Rumble Premium. And so then if you want to participate in the Rumble chat while watching the subscriber stream, if you have Rumble Premium, you'll be able to do that. Rumble Premium is a key component of Rumble's monetization model. And it is something that supports the platform, and the platform then supports the content creators to the best of its ability, considering that YouTube is the competitor the machine, the monopolist organization that has monopolized all of the advertising dollars and the attention-based dollars when it comes to an online video platform. So to think that we are just going to override that is totally unrealistic, but they are competing and they are trying to support their creators, people who have taken advantage of this as a free speech platform of Rumble. I mean, Rumble has not censored us, at any time. They've held the line when it comes to censorship, and Chris Pavlovsky is out there, the CEO, every day, making the case to the public. They are fighting a battle now in Brazil over free speech. I don't know if they will win that or not. Truthfully, I don't know if foreign social media companies should automatically be allowed in our country. So I can't then say that American social media companies should definitely be allowed in other countries. That's their decision. That's their problem to work out. I would like to know what they do, and I would like to know how that works out. If it's a regime, if it's the regime side of the info war, is that something that we believe should get exported? And it's not in Rumble's case, but it could be in other cases. And the argument is happening over Twitter in Europe right now. But back to Rumble. Corporate America is fighting to remove speech. Rumble is fighting to keep it. Rumble won't survive with brand advertisers. They don't get much of it. Watching this show on Rumble is the most I can ask from you. But if you really believe in this fight and you have the means, one major way you can help Rumble survive is by joining Rumble Premium. Join the community that believes in the First Amendment and believes in our human right to free speech. Rumble is offering $10 off with the promo code STUDIO when you purchase an annual subscription. Go to rumble.com/premium and use promo code STUDIO. Like I said, if you have the means and believe in the cause, now is the time to join Rumble Premium. If you don't have the means, we are just happy if you watch us on Rumble. Okay, let's get back to business here. Checking in on the chat. Everybody's doing okay. Rumble rant from John Henry Bonzo, $10. We appreciate your contributions to Badlands Media, your podcasts, and Substack articles. Chris, enjoy your weekend. Thank you very much, my friend, and thank you for your continued support. All right, let's get back into it. And we will go here to Trump's post this morning on Truth Social. Hold for processing. I don't know why this is taking me so long. There we are. If there was a smoking gun on Epstein, why didn't the Dems, who controlled the quote-unquote files for years and had Garland and Comey in charge, use it? Because they had nothing, he says. Garland and Comey is interesting because Comey, Ray was the FBI director during the Garland term, not Comey. So it's odd that he has framed it this way. But then again, we're talking about the rollout of a very strange info op. So I would not side 100% with taking him at his literal word there or thinking that he made a mistake. Could just be coded language. That's what a lot of people believe a lot of it is. And I think that there's something to that. It's something worth paying attention to. Even if it is a low probability possibility, it is still worth considering because it is a possibility and a relevant one. This is the Daily Mail from last night. Trump goes nuclear on Rupert Murdoch after his, quote, filthy rag publishes letter to Epstein while calling for Bondi to clear his name. President Donald Trump went ballistic on the Wall Street Journal and owner Rupert Murdoch, threatening to sue his ass off over a salacious birthday card Trump allegedly sent to Jeffrey Epstein. The president called for Attorney General Pam Bondi to clear his name by releasing testimony in the disgraced financier's prosecution as the Epstein saga threatens to engulf his presidency. The Wall Street Journal printed a fake letter supposedly to Epstein. He wrote on Truth Social, "These are not my words, not the way I talk. Also, I don't draw pictures. I told Rupert Murdoch it was a scam and he shouldn't print this fake story, but he did, and now I'm going to sue his ass off and that of his third-rate newspaper. I want to look back at that just for a moment, because I am pretty sure that he only said Mr. Murdoch multiple times, so they are not directly quoting him in this article. I guess they are taking liberties in favor of readability. I don't know. But they misquoted Trump's post there. So the point here is that this is how Trump is being portrayed. He's so angry about this story that he's going to sue the Washington Journal. And he's so angry because this is such a destructive story. And you get trapped right back into that cycle again. Maybe he's just suing Rupert Murdoch because Fox News has been a key contributor to the regime's information operation. They are a function of the global regime and therefore the enemy. Now, maybe that's changed hands over the last few years, and they're all doing everything they can to correspond directly to the secret white hat op playing out behind the scenes. Okay? We can always throw that caveat in there. Even if that were the case, unless they've been that the whole time, well, then Fox News needs to go down a few pegs. And the past issues that would have been caused by Fox News, maybe all of this is about interference with the Steele dossier. Maybe this is just a fictional retelling of the Steele dossier process so that we can understand the culpability of these media organizations and their complicity in the regime anti-Trump info ops. Okay? That would be enough right there. It would also be enough to see them punished in the public sphere in a legitimate way, regardless of what story we're told while that's happening, because we need everything to be presented to us in soap opera format. Let's continue. Trump posted again on Truth Social. I look forward to getting Rupert Murdoch to testify in my lawsuit against him and his, quote, pile of garbage, end quote, newspaper, the Wall Street Journal. That will be an interesting experience. Well, what has he said about Rupert Murdoch? In the first post, he said that Rupert Murdoch didn't have the power to stop the release of that story. Well, if it is a leaked and seeded white hat op to have that story printed, then no one's going to stop it. And therefore, Rupert Murdoch would not have the power to stop it. Rupert Murdoch might not be any controlling part of the Fox News empire right now, though it's impossible to know. The only way we could know is if we believed what the regime had to tell us about the honest state of affairs, and there's no reason to believe that that is even a possibility. So, you know, it's entirely possible that he's still making decisions. I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying to be waiting for the media to tell us Rupert Murdoch's not in control anymore, that's not who Trump's talking about. Well, that's not going to happen. So he's presented him as not having enough power, and now he's saying that it would be an interesting experience to have Rupert Murdoch testify. Will Rupert Murdoch testify? That would be quite interesting. I don't think that we're going to see that happen. Steve Bannon today was talking about Rupert Murdoch and how he wasn't required to testify in the Fox Dominion lawsuit because they eventually settled. And so will we see him on trial in some sense, on the witness stand at some point in the future, perhaps? Polymath Anon, $10. Thanks for the good show yet again, Chris, and for your reasonable voice. I thank you, and APL should be thanking you. And yes, she should. And I will also note that Donald Trump singled out Una Panuna today at his Genius Act signing So good for Una Panuna. That'll even earn her a Gutfeld Panuna.
Anna Paulina Luna. All right.
You're welcome, Greg Gutfeld. Okay. Let's continue. Actually, speaking of Steve Bannon, let's go to Steve Bannon. Whoops. Here we are.
Natalie's going to be with us. She's going to come in right after the break. This thing stinks to high heaven. Fusion GPS is about as dirty a political operative as you can possibly get. This all goes back to them. It turns out they never showed the letter to President Trump. He's got them on blast. They're going to put the Wall Street Journal, they're going to drop a suit on the Wall Street Journal and on Murdoch personally. My understanding is President Trump tried to engage with the senior levels and say, hey, show us what you got before you publish something. No, but they've been rumoring this, this is going to be things so big. It was a dud, a complete dud. I mean, do anybody think Trump talks like that or writes like that? It's absurd. And they don't have any proof. This thing is a complete debacle, but it showed their hands. This is why we advocated from the beginning, Jack, be on offense, be on offense, be on offense. They're trying to set a million traps, and there are more traps out there. The best way to get around these traps is go on offense. Attack, attack, attack. That's the mode that Trump's best in. And it's the Murdochs that are coming after you because they're the heads of the ruling class. They're the media arm, the propaganda arm for the ruling class. They're out there in Sun Valley at the Billionaires Conference with all these tech billionaires and all the tech bros plotting. And more President Trump does for them, the more they want to destroy him.
It is quite interesting, is it not? I mean, it could be all part of a grand white hat info op. Could be. There's just no reason to believe that it is. Okay. I mean, we can play match online and understand that something else is going on behind the scenes, but I don't think any of us would argue against that. I know something's going on behind the scenes. I think everything is going on behind the scenes, and the things that aren't behind the scenes aren't really going on. So that I don't need convincing on that. Anyway. At some point, we just have to decide to duck out completely from the mainstream info op. They are being taken down before our eyes. I called it a month ago. Steve Bannon had Eric Trump on. They said RINO hunting. Tucker went on. Fox News, neocons, warmongers, sort of a little tiny bit Israel over the course of that week with Ted Cruz later that week. Here we see it in full bloom, and it will culminate with a Fox News trial, perhaps, a suit akin to Trump going after, as he said, Stephanopoulos and 60 Minutes. Could be. Here is the man pretending to be vice president, J.D. Vance. This is from his personal account, by the way. That is what I'm led to believe, though I am not. It's not. I think maybe there's a V POTUS account. So from his personal account, he tweets in response to the Wall Street Journal story. Forgive my language, but this story is complete and utter bullshit. The Wall Street Journal should be ashamed for publishing it. Where is this letter? Would you be shocked to learn they never showed it to us before publishing it? Does anyone honestly believe this sounds like Donald Trump? Well, no, I don't believe it sounds like Donald Trump. But I think it's weird that you said, would you be shocked to learn they never showed it to us before publishing it? Who is us? Why would anyone show it to JD? He doesn't need to know. It really is very strange. Like, to be the wording with us sounds very, very weird. Also, I think he had deleted his original tweet and reposted. And Beth in the chat might know better than I on that one. But I thought it looked like there was one tweet and then he changed it to these two. This is the second part. Doesn't it violate some rule of journalistic ethics to publish a letter like this without showing it to the victim of this hit piece? Will the people who have bought into every hoax against President Trump show an ounce of skepticism before buying into this bizarre story? Well, the last part is true, and that's the case I've been making. I think that's not, I don't think they're going to show an ounce of skepticism. And this was apparently J.D. Vance's tweets came out before Donald Trump's tweets. I guess he wanted to get out ahead of the president and set some narrative standards before the president had time to go out there and respond to it. Hey, man, do people actually listen to J.D. Vance? Does his opinion matter? Does he move people in their minds? Maybe he does, and I'm just not aware of it, but it seems a little odd to preempt him that way. And he is ultimately here calling for the release of this letter. He wants to see the proof of what they're saying. Now, do they have, first of all, if the letter's real, then you have to assume that someone has access to that real letter and they can release the real letter and then it will still be a nothing burger. But if they don't have access to that real letter, they could release anything and call it the letter. And then we would have seen that. To people who can't think, that would be proof to them. They'd be like, see, we told you that there's a real letter. But it's not proof of anything. It's just the same regime media releasing the next piece of the info up to confirm the last piece. And there will be probably more pieces. They'll try to make each one sound more dramatic. Same as Stormy Daniels, same as E. Jean Carroll. All these stories are the same. The media rollouts, no matter what kind of story they're telling, are always the same. They put out everything that you need to know. And then when people start to respond, well, that doesn't sound quite right, then they'll release new stories that explain exactly how it's still quite right. And you'll think, whoa, they've really gotten to the bottom of those details. Now it's explained. Now it must be true. My objections are totally taken care of. Okay? So they lie, and then they lie again. And you're like, well, I know they lie sometimes, but I also know that they tell the truth sometimes. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. And then on the second lie, you're like, okay, well, that second lie, that was enough. That did it for me. This must be true now. There are truthers who think that way and operate that way. Okay? It's a lie sometimes. Like what, their motivations change over time? Populism and nationalism aren't threats. The regime's global control over economy and militaries and media aren't threats. It's amazing. Amazing. Let's keep going. So JD is asking for the next element of the info op to be released. Now, there's two ways to play this. And I'm going to give you the yes, JD is a good guy, and no, JD is just an irrelevant plant used for, I don't know, comic relief to show what dummies exist in the conservative sphere and in the tech world. Maybe that's the entire purpose of J.D. Vance. I'm not sure. I'm trying to find where his, here it is. The picture from the other day. Remember him just 5 days ago in this humiliation ritual to celebrate the 1 year anniversary of him being selected to pretend to be the running mate in a fake election campaign, where he said lots of based and red-pilled things to all the podcast bros and everyone in the normie sphere. And they thought, oh, this is so positive. We have a standard bearer who can be president after Trump. It's going to be so much nicer to have this guy in control. That's what he was marketed to be. And that's what people accepted him as if, you are susceptible to every info op that's rolled out. Otherwise, you look at that and you say, hey, the heir apparent is putting out a picture taken of himself in a Trump 2028 hat, advertising himself as what, not heir apparent? If you are still holding on to J.D. Vance being the heir apparent and just thinking, oh no, 2032. You are still groveling, A, to J.D. Vance, but B, just among your fellow Americans, you are saying that you are ready to choose who should be president in 2032 based on J.D. Vance being selected as vice president to Donald Trump after already watching Mike Pence? What? How? How does anyone maintain that? I don't know. I don't know. All you have to do is think about these issues in their fullness, and it's immediately like, oh, well, that's ridiculous. Look at him. He looks ridiculous. I said it this morning. He looks like a doofus. He does look like a doofus. Trump 2028. Give me a break. It's crazy. So that's a humiliation ritual. And now J.D. Vance is clearly out there instigating the next phase of the info op. And here's Lawrence O'Donnell on MSNBC last night. He went on like a 20-minute diatribe. This picks up about 12 minutes in.
Donald Trump posted that on social media tonight. His vice president got out ahead of Donald Trump on social media and said something that Donald Trump refused to say in his own social media post. What J.D. Vance wrote tonight could be his first big move to become the next president of the United States without waiting for the next election, because what J.D. Vance wrote tonight adds fuel to the fire burning in Trump world about the Epstein files, which now will burn all the hotter because of the Wall Street Journal's reporting tonight. J.D. Vance said what could be the most harmful thing anyone on the Trump team could say tonight. In his social media post, J.D. Vance used Donald Trump's new favorite form of public presidential profanity in J.D. Vance's best imitation of Donald Trump. J.D. Vance wrote, "Forgive my language, but this story is complete and utter bullcrap. The Wall Street Journal should be ashamed for publishing it. Where is the letter? Would you be shocked to learn they never showed it to us before publishing it? Does anyone honestly believe this sounds like Donald Trump?" And in another post, J.D. Vance wrote, "Doesn't it violate some rule of journalistic ethics to publish a letter like this without showing it to the victim of this hit piece?" The answer is no. It does not violate journalistic ethics. And the worst thing that can happen to Donald Trump is for the Wall Street Journal or anyone else to release publicly a copy of that letter. The worst thing that could happen to Donald Trump is exactly what his vice president, J.D. Vance, is demanding tonight. J.D. Vance, the person who would move up to the presidency if this issue becomes so difficult that it drives Donald Trump out of the presidency through impeachment or resignation. We have seen this happen to a president before, and Donald Trump has never been weaker. And J.D. Vance of all people, is saying, show us the letter, demanding to see the letter. Donald Trump did not dare to say, where is the letter, in his social media post tonight, which occurred 40 minutes after J.D. Vance's social media post tonight. Donald Trump is not asking to see that letter. Donald Trump doesn't want you to see that letter. But J.D. Vance wants you to see that letter. If J.D. Vance creates a groundswell demand by more and more Trump supporters for the release of that letter, that could do more damage to Donald Trump than anything that has ever happened to Donald Trump in his entire political career. And it's J.D. Vance who's doing this.
So, congrats, JD. Now, JD could know the info op in advance and be trying to trigger it and deflate it. I don't know. Maybe he's being the good guy. Okay. Otherwise, he's playing directly into these people's hands. That's certainly how Lawrence O'Donnell took it. Now, I've been told, I think CanCon said it this morning, although I'm not sure who sent it to me. I've been told, and someone can check me on this, that Caroline Leavitt came out today and also said that the media outlets should release the letter. And that would be an indication, I would think, that they know that the entire thing is bullshit. And the letter is not going to be damaging in any way if it's real. And maybe they're just trying to turn up the pressure on the media, turn up the pressure on the Wall Street Journal to force them to show what their evidence is. Okay. I mean, again, we're talking about the Steele dossier model. So we got to get through all these steps. But if J.D. Vance is being a white hat, then Lawrence O'Donnell might be too. Just saying. Okay. Because he's playing into the other side of that op, making his audience think, oh, the letter's going to be a big deal. The letter's going to be the thing. And then people will commit to that letter. Oh, the letter when it comes out, that's going to be the most damning thing. J.D. Vance is doing this in Lawrence O'Donnell's telling because he thinks that this is going to help get rid of Donald Trump, to remove him from office so that J.D. Vance can ascend to the presidency. That's an awfully strange thing for Lawrence O'Donnell to be theorizing, don't you think? I don't know. I don't know where the story's going. I mean, I have a pretty good idea that's not going there, but hey, man, it could. Will they try to remove Donald Trump from office and all this? Probably. We'll probably get over the course of the next year. This is old theory on this podcast, but that we have historical stories being replayed in reruns, like Ukraine and Israel. That's a replay of World War II. Okay. And so the a Trump takedown attempt by the DOJ and the FBI, well, that's a Watergate rerun. And so I expect that we'll see stuff like that. And, attempts made to remove Donald Trump from office. And it'll all just eventually unravel and expose itself. But you can see the makings of a step-by-step info op as we watch along. And of course, again, I would suggest that there is strong reason to believe that all this stuff is simply scripted. Let's get to today. Man, this is one of those days. I probably could have easily talked for another 2.5 to 3 hours worth of issues, but I'm not going to do that, of course. And those are not obviously the sort of primary issues that these are. I was going to spend some time on Brazil and Bolsonaro and the tariffs, and I do think all of that is important. I would encourage everybody, as the Bolsonaro story comes back around, to pay special attention to it and to pay special attention to the story parallels as they happened here 2 years prior. Okay? Trump's calling it a witch hunt down in Brazil against Bolsonaro. Where else is he saying a witch hunt's going on? In Israel against Netanyahu. And again, as I've said since the paragliding go-kart incident, this is clearly all to take Netanyahu out of power because the color revolution didn't work. Okay? And you can watch the Brazil thing play out. It's just a replay of what happened here 2 years later. And I think just even understanding those elements, being able to look at the pattern and say, okay, we have Trump here, we have Bolsonaro there. We have Joe Biden here, we have Brazilian Joe Biden, Lula da Silva down in Brazil. We had the January 6th version of the Reichstag fire here in the United States. We had the January 8th version of the Reichstag fire in Brazil. Okay. And again, that whole scenario was a replay of the Reichstag fire. It's all reruns. I'm just saying. They don't have any new intellectual property. And just to cap the theory off, they don't have any new intellectual property because the story beats have to remain the same. Okay. They are using stories to influence the public consciousness, the collective consciousness. And they do it through emotional triggers, trauma, psychological manipulation, etc. So all the stories are designed to hit the same emotional points so that the meaning that gets smuggled in with them, with the emotion, when we are weakened and unable to discern because our emotions have taken us over, that's when they are able to effectively pull one over on us. Sorry, I lost my train of thought there right at the end, trying to pull up this Next story. Here we are. Daily Mail again, just quickly. Trump has new billionaire best buddy, and he's set to be even more powerful than exiled Elon Musk. So this is the news story. Same timeline. Here's the news story. New billionaire buddy. After the dramatic rise and fall of President Donald Trump's partnership with Elon Musk, the former Doge boss has been exiled to the sidelines and is forced to watch his nemesis, OpenAI chief Sam Altman, chief executive Sam Altman, potentially take his place. Altman and Musk had one of the most publicly brutal fallouts in the tech world when they went from partners to foes in 2018. Oh, how dramatic and exciting. Another breakup. But Donald Trump is getting screwed over by his old billionaire friend, Jeffrey Epstein. He's been screwed over by his new billionaire friend, Elon Musk. And now he has a new billionaire friend, Sam Altman of OpenAI. And I would suggest that we are witnessing another info op. And we'll see how Sam Altman is tasked with guiding the implementation of AI into the federal government. And it'll then help us figure out something with Doge and blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's keep going. This was a press release this morning from the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. That would be the television character known as Tulsi Gabbard, who just so happens to have the styling of an X-Men character and believes in many armed gods. Here we go. New evidence of Obama administration conspiracy to subvert President Trump's 2016 victory and presidency. On Friday, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard revealed overwhelming evidence that demonstrates how, after President Trump won the 2016 election against Hillary Clinton, President Obama and his national security cabinet members manufactured and politicized intelligence to lay the groundwork for what was essentially a years-long coup against President Trump. Fox News is pushing this. We'll get to that in just a second. In the months leading up to the November 2016 election, the intelligence community consistently assessed that Russia is probably not trying to influence the election by using cyber means. And again, we have Cambridge Analytica playing out in the Facebook trial. That trial also listing Thiel and Andreessen as co-defendants. On December 7th, 2016, after the election, talking points were prepared for DNI James Clapper, stating, foreign adversaries did not use cyber attacks on election infrastructure to alter the U.S. presidential outcome. Sorry, it did not say 2016 in there. I was just reading that in my mind. Foreign adversaries did not use cyber attacks on election infrastructure to alter the outcome. This was a talking point prepared for the former but current then DNI James Clapper, who is deep state as they come. On December 9th, 2016, President Obama's White House gathered top National Security Council principals for a meeting that included James Clapper, John Brennan, Susan Rice, John Kerry, Loretta Lynch, Andrew McCabe, and others to discuss Russia. So again, all the villains of Russiagate. And for some reason, John Kerry is always in everything. It's so creepy. After the meeting, DNI Clapper's executive assistant sent an email to IC leaders, intelligence community leaders, tasking them with creating a new IC assessment per the president's request that details the tools Moscow used and actions it took to influence the 2016 election. It went on to say, ODNI will lead this effort with participation from CIA, FBI, NSA, and DHS. Obama officials leaked false statements to media outlets, including the Washington Post, claiming Russia has attempted through cyber means to interfere in, if not actively influence, the outcome of an election. On January 6th, 2017, a new intelligence community assessment was released that directly contradicted the IC assessments that were made throughout the previous 6 months. After months of investigation into this matter, the facts reveal this new assessment was based on information that was known by those involved to be manufactured, i.e. the Steele dossier, or deemed as not credible. This was politicized intelligence that was used as the basis for countless smears to delegitimize President Trump's victory, the years-long Mueller investigation, 2 congressional impeachments, high-level officials being investigated, arrested, and thrown in jail, heightened U.S.-Russia tensions, and more. A statement from Tulsi Gabbard. The issue I am raising is not a partisan issue. It is one that concerns every American. The information we are releasing today clearly shows there was a treasonous conspiracy in 2016 committed by officials at the highest level of our government. Their goal was to subvert the will of the American people and enact what was essentially a years-long coup with the objective of trying to usurp the president from fulfilling the mandate bestowed upon him by the American people. Their egregious abuse of power and blatant rejection of our Constitution threatens the very foundation and integrity of our democratic republic. No matter how powerful, every person involved in this conspiracy must be investigated and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law to ensure nothing like this ever happens again. The American people's faith and trust in our democratic republic and therefore the future of our nation depends on it. As such, I am providing all documents to the Department of Justice to deliver the accountability that President Trump, his family, and the American people deserve. So television character Tulsi Gabbard is telling the general public that once again, the Russiagate hoax was a real hoax. And the Obama administration knew about it before, during, and after the critical moments. Okay, they knew about it at least in July of 2016. And then they still allowed the American public to believe that nothing like that was happening. Now, did they do that in service of some grand white hat op playing out in the background? I don't know. Maybe there's some chance that's true. I don't think it's true. That's not where I lean. But who knows? You know, we can leave all avenues of reasonable skepticism open, or alternatives derived from skepticism, I should say. Okay, and that's a lot of what the speculation is. It's an alternative derived from skepticism, which is an entirely rational and reasonable thing to do. Okay, it's what we naturally do. We think, oh, okay, well, we know it's probably not that thing, no matter how many people believe it. So it's got to be something else. What is that other thing? Okay, it's important to recognize how this is all spinning up in our minds. We are getting a replay of the Russiagate story for a particular reason. We're getting a replay of the Steele dossier story for a particular reason. All of these replays are happening for a particular reason. And it's because, assuming that Donald Trump is actually trying to take down this deep state, this global regime in full at once, this would be the way you do it. And in 2016, people were not prepared to hear that Hillary Clinton was attempting to steal an election and she was being assisted by Barack Obama and Joe Biden and the intelligence community and the FBI. All of them were involved in the usurpation of our country. But the truth is they had usurped our country 160 years ago, if not much longer. And they were just functions of that usurpation already. Okay? We are now reaching the point where people could actually wrap their heads around that. And I would suggest to you that wrapping your head around that, not you because you have, but the people in your circle, the people in the broader American public, wrapping their head around that is the point. We have to get to that point. And I think that these sorts of stories are leading us strongly in that direction. Just want to pull the headline up here for just a second from Fox News, so we can see exactly how it is being framed for the standard issue villagers on the uniparty right. Obama admin manufactured intelligence to create 2016 Russian election interference narrative, documents show. Okay, and so they are reporting about the Tulsi Gabbard release. Demonstrates how, after President Donald Trump won the 2016 election against Hillary Clinton, then President Barack Obama and his national security team laid the groundwork for what would be the years-long Trump-Russia collusion probe. Documents revealed that in the months leading up to the November 2016 election, the intelligence community consistently assessed that Russia was probably not trying to influence the election by using cyber means. And so it is just yet another example of the total falsehood of the Trump-Russia collusion narrative in any legitimate way. Now, the thing is, they also talk about how Russian government-aligned actors might have been trying to enter voter registration bases. In fact, let me just pull it back up. I think it had that claim, and I might as well state it exactly like they stated it. Foreign adversaries did not use cyber attacks on election infrastructure to alter the U.S. presidential outcome. That was the point made to Clapper. The Presidential Daily Brief had stated, we assessed that Russian and criminal actors did not impact recent U.S. election results by conducting malicious cyber activities against election infrastructure. Russian government-affiliated actors most likely compromised an Illinois voter registration database and unsuccessfully attempted the same in other states. Okay? Russian government-affiliated actors. Now, when you divide by good twin, evil twin, rather than by Democrat, Republican, right, left, red, blue, Russia has factions as well, okay? But all that matters is good twin, evil twin. You can be affiliated, you could be government affiliated right now and have no connection to Donald Trump, okay? And that is very easy to understand because Donald Trump's number one task and purpose from the American people, the reason they gave him the mandate was to eliminate all of the government actors that work in opposition to Donald Trump. Understanding that same model in another country should tell us that there can be government-aligned actors that are nonetheless not aligned with Vladimir Putin and not doing Vladimir Putin's bidding. They could just be aligned with other parts of the government. Okay? So that is one of those statements that sounds very conclusive, but is not actually conclusive at all. It only opens more questions. And it would not be remotely surprising to see legitimate Russia-based global regime interference reframed as Russian-based interference to help Trump, okay? Or to potentially just frame Trump as having cheated. And if that was the case, then the Kill Chain documentary would make a lot of sense in that light. And that is its own rabbit hole and its own line of reasoning that we do not have time to go down right now. There is one last thing I definitely do not want to miss before we get out of here for the week. And it is this. House passes Trump's request to rescind foreign aid, public media funding after Epstein fallout delays vote. House Republicans approved a package after midnight Friday to claw back $9 billion in foreign aid and public broadcasting funding, sending it to President Trump's desk. Congress beat a Friday end-of-day deadline to pass the bill, which is known as a rescissions request, after which the money would have had to been spent as originally intended. Efforts to release files related to child sex offender Jeffrey Epstein stalled movement on the bill for hours. Okay? So they are literally saying the release of this not actually damning report about Jeffrey Epstein delayed this bill. Was the timing for that purpose? Maybe. You might say, well, this is just rescissions. This is not a rescissions bill. It's not that big of a deal. And you might be right, but I'm not sure you're right. It might be a much bigger deal than that, because a rescissions bill that we are now seeing, that the public is seeing, and it's attached to the NPR and PBS thing. So liberals' heads explode, worried that their favorite outlets are going to have their funding cut. And it's just Trump trying to control the government because he's a dictator. He doesn't want the state media saying bad things about him. Hey, commies, why would the state media be saying bad things about the president all the time? It's because they're objective journalists. People actually believe this shit, okay? So they get all invested in the issue, and then they accept this story. Oh, wow. That rescissions thing that we were told couldn't happen, it just happened. I wonder what else can happen. I wonder if impoundment can happen. I wonder if Trump can just shut down agencies that he doesn't feel like running. The answer, of course, as we've talked about on this podcast for many, many months, is obviously yes. And now you have the first example of it. And I think this is a very big deal, because this entirely changes the expectation on what a president can do when he is sent a bad budget. And it puts all of the emphasis then on the president to remove anything that is bad from that budget. Okay? This isn't the way the regime wants this thing to operate. They want to be able to use any tactic at any time. They want to be able to bind the hands of a president who is not regime aligned through, quote unquote, legislation by a bunch of illegitimate congressmen. And they want to tie his hands. And that's how it always was, because they continue to have a complicit regime president at the helm. So when they release ridiculous budgets, the president would say, well, you know, we got to sign the NDAA. We have no choice about this one. Well, we have to keep the government running, or else we're going to have a big, scary government shutdown. We have no choice on this one. And it removes all the accountability from the president. And removing all the accountability from the president is the same thing as thwarting any mandate that president might have if the president is not allowed to exercise that mandate. But on the side of a regime president, it just allows them to clean their hands, to wash their hands of any responsibility for passing a budget that the American people know is terrible. Or at least they only have their little partial responsibility. But it was mostly this other group's fault. It wasn't mostly the president's fault. It was mostly the Congress. And there's like 535 of them. So you can never tell which ones are doing the bad thing. And I guess nobody's accountable. Every budget that we've had for my lifetime has been that way. And now something is different. And I think that is an important change, and potentially a major change. And I would assume more major than we are being led to believe, because you have to remember that people closer to the action understand more about the action. Okay. They're more likely to know what's really going on. They're more likely to be able to read the signals of the others around them. If there is a freak out, the freak out might not be what we think it is from a surface level interpretation of the fake news media. The freak out is probably about something deeper and more existential to them. The whole thing is existential to them. But removing their ability to pass budgets, and through those budgets, tie the president's hands and force all the agencies to be run how they've commanded, that's one of their biggest weapons, just removed from the battlefield. And Donald Trump did that. And the info op did that ultimately. But Donald Trump did that. Okay. And it's the interplay back and forth with this totally illegitimate Congress that is enabling that to happen. And so the point is, you know, online, people are just like, well, he hasn't drained the swamp. If anything, it's getting worse. Curtis Yarvin was just out there. Oh, Trump's not even focused on draining the swamp anymore. For real, that's what he was arguing in his piece today. He's just trying to make government function well so he can be anti-Trump no matter how well Trump's doing. These people are crazy. I got off track there with Yarvin. I'm sorry. I triggered myself when it comes to Curtis Yarvin and steered us directly into a ditch. How dare I? Okay, let me just see if I can reprise my thought as we read Donald Trump's Truth Social post about this. And this, just to be clear, is about the Genius Act in terms of the big signing. But I just think that this is a good place to kind of leave all of this at the end. The episode is titled Unscathed. Trump has emerged even from this, even from the Jeffrey Epstein thing, totally unscathed. Okay? You have to understand that the enemy info op is done and dusted. It is only about public perception. There is no way that they can capture public perception, but it is still the task to get people to recognize these things, these truths, and what must be done. Okay, so that is the phase we are in, trying to defeat these people. It has already happened. Trump said, big signing it at 2:30 in the White House. Congratulations to our great Republicans for being able to accomplish so much, a record in so short a period of time. And all the Democrats do is complain and criticize and get nothing done. They are a party of the past. And I do remember what I was talking about, but not exactly what I wanted to say. But I was just making the point that Trump has eliminated all of these regime weapons, crucial tools that they have used. And you can say that the next president, we're still in that framing in some people's minds. The next Trump can't be president in 2028. And then at that point, some president's going to come in and turn it right back to the other direction. Okay. Well, it's our job to make sure that can't happen. And part of that job is actually vetting and monitoring J.D. Vance instead of just chalking that one up as okay. Okay. If we are meant to defend this warrior, who is the strongest warrior battling on our behalf, and we are unwilling to look at the people around him because he is the one ostensibly responsible for putting him there, well, then we're not defending him. Okay. And so we have to look at those things. We have to make those choices. The framing of who's going to be president in 2028 is irrelevant, not only because we don't know, and it's not the focus of right now, but it's because the narrative has already pushed past that point. Okay. We have already pushed past the point where a new president can come in and coordinate with a regime-oriented Congress to take all of these powers back for themselves after Donald Trump has clearly stripped them away. The people are not going to allow that. They're especially not going to allow it in one fell swoop. Okay. They don't actually have the power to implement everything they want to implement if the people aren't complying, if the people are engaged in their local communities and holding local officials accountable, because ultimately whatever happens at the federal level is just agenda manipulation and agenda implementation manipulation at a lower level through government funding and all these various programs and NGOs that operate everything. Okay. So there's not going to be a point at which the American people now don't know that this sort of thing is possible. And it's our role, of course, to press this into the American understanding. Presidents are actually just allowed to cancel any spending they want at any time because they're the plenary authority of the executive branch. And under the Constitution, the Congress cannot make the president do things in contradiction to his own administration's agenda. Period. End of story. That's all we need. All right, we're going to wrap it up and leave it there. I'm going to check on Rumble Rants. I'm going to do a quick Rumble ad, check on the chats, and then we're out of here. Beth, $5. No, there was a tweet on Blue Sky, and then he did a longer one on X, and she's talking about J.D. Vance. Maybe I saw his Blue Sky tweet first. Oh, now she says, for another $5, thank you, Beth. Ignore my fake news. He did not post it on Blue Sky, and he also never posted on the VP account, just his personal. Okay, yeah, so that's what it is. I think that there also just might be a deleted post on his personal that he replaced. I could be wrong about that. I will try to verify that a little better. Okay, and that's it for the Rumble Rants, checking in with people over on YouTube. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for hanging out in the chat and participating. If you are out there on Rumble or YouTube, please go ahead and hit that thumbs up because theoretically, at least, that does help me. Who knows about reality? Quick Rumble ad, and then we will be out of here. If you still haven't tried 1775 coffee, do it now. The 1775 starter kit is out. There is a limited number of units, and I can imagine they are going away because we've been talking about this for quite a long time. I cannot imagine that if there was a limited number of units, it would still be happening. Apparently, they have a typo on the number of units. It cannot be 1,000. I'm convinced. You're getting the bold dark roast that hits harder than a CNN fact check, the smooth medium roast, and the Vitality mushroom coffee for clean energy and laser focus. No crash. All single origin, small batch, toxin free, and mold free. Plus, you're also getting a gold spoon clip, a frother, and a black 1775 tumbler. $170 worth of coffee and gear, yours for $99. This is for the ones who've been watching 1775 blow up on Rumble, wondering if it's actually worth it. Spoiler alert, it is. Go to 1775coffee/studio and get your starter kit before they're gone. Bold beans, clean fuel, and a morning routine that stands for something, just like Rumble does. Start your day with coffee that actually backs what you believe. And with that, I am going to bid you adieu. I hope all of you had a wonderful time hanging out in the chat. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Thank you all very much for your support. The likes and the comments are very much appreciated. All the kind words and the responses on the Substack stuff lately especially have been wonderful. Thank you for your help in the Telegram chat and on Truth Social and the rest of it. I appreciate all of that more than you can ever possibly know. And with that, I will see you on Tuesday at the same reasonable time on the same reasonable podcast network. I don't have a network. Masks and lockdowns don't work. They lied to you about a pandemic, and Joe Biden will never be president, or was never president. Damn it! Started poor, ended poor, almost had it.
Well,
what?
You know who I am, don't you?
Well, you ain't Fiona Apple, and if you ain't Fiona Apple, I don't give a rat's ass.
What's wrong with being an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times? What do you think, Max?
Do you want to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times?
Yeah, I think I'd like to be an angry prophet denouncing the hypocrisies of our times.
It's not true. It's more true than I would perhaps prefer.
Can we stop this cruel game and allow the boy to keep one shred of dignity? For God's sakes! I can't stand to see him in all this pain! You vicious bastards! Let him move in with you! Is it so bad to see somebody happy? So just let him move in! For the love of God, let the boy move in with you! Good Lord!
And I will not let you down.
We do a little trolling. It's called We Do a Little Trolling.
What? In my mind, that's the end game.
If you're listening for free and would like to support the show, the best way to do that is by signing up for a paid subscription at imyourmoderator.substack.com. You can find the info stream over on Telegram at t.me/veryreasonable. The merch site is cancelcouture.com, and for all my other links, you can visit linktree.com/imyourmoderator. And I'll see you soon. Down on the range.